Yeah. Yeah, I remember so nice as we started with. Yeah. See it down behind.
Get started. We're gonna go ahead and just start our meeting of the SCSC governance group. With a roll call, if I can have you start us off.
Luchatora, one DHA.
Like Councilman, my VHA. Like Salinas, Rep County Commissioner.
Jay Harrington, Royal County.
Clark Anderson, community builders.
Gail.
Gail Gary, City of Steamboat Springs, City Council.
Tom Leeson, City of Steamboat Springs.
Shannon Twin Landers, YK Tag.
Dave Fox, City of Steamboat Springs.
Gail McMonagle with Civic Canopy. All right, so I'll have us do just a little bit of a longer check-in in a minute, but to get us started for today, I'll go through the overview and where we're headed, and what we hope to complete by the end of this. So today's purpose is going to be particular in the sense that we're going to look towards concluding this series of meetings, assuming we can get to consensus on all the different elements we're trying to put together this time. To be able to define the next decision-making steps for Brown Ranch, now Slate Creek neighborhood. And so here is where, when you see our objectives for this meeting, this is what we've set out at basically at the very beginning with of what we wanted to accomplish. And so this is where we're kind of landing the plane over the course of these two meetings to deliver these final deliverables. Okay, and then just as a reminder, this is where we've gone throughout this process. So we're here in June, really looking to be at the space of revising and adopting these plans. And kind of prepping for this meeting, Brad reflected back to me, this is kind of like this meeting is almost like a project launch in some ways. We're really getting together the scope of work, we're figuring out roles and responsibilities, and then we're saying, all right, let's go, right? So it's the conclusion of this phase of figuring out how do we work together, who does what, that type of thing, setting up your purpose. But then this is really the launch of whatever you do next together in the details in your roadmap and things like that. And so let's go ahead and make some of these things smaller. In terms of what it looks like to revise and adopt plans, all of the pre-reads that you had are elements of pulling together elements we've created over time. So membership and decision-making we did early on, those are in your governance agreements. In that, we also heard the need to talk about roles and responsibilities. So we'll do that tomorrow and that will get added to those governance agreements. We've been able to synthesize some different approaches to community engagement, and we'll finish up with a direction for that going forward, as well as a communication plan direction. And I say direction on both of those because, as we'll see today, there's a bunch of sort of like if-thens nested in here of like what you do throughout the roadmap determines when you do community engagement and that type of thing. But we want to get into like the general approach so that you can say, okay, here's the direction we want to go in. Now let's figure out the tactics. And then defining that end goal, we'll have that purpose statement. We've got the purpose statement. We're going to add the guiding principles. And then the annexation roadmap is going to outline both the roadmap and what we see as kind of the necessary components for the next Brown Ranch plan. And I apologize, I'm reusing slides, so they still say Brown Ranch, but every time I say that, I'm referring to Slate Creek neighborhood. So this is the way it's going to break out in terms of the next 2 days. We're going to start with just a quick connection. We're going to go ahead and really start at the high level with the purpose statement and the roadmap, because a lot of the if-thens stem from those two pieces. With that being said, give me a thumbs up, middle or down of I've read through the constraints analysis. Okay, So I was guessing, I didn't assign it as a pre-read because I was guessing that it was already pre-reading that you all were doing, right? That will get brought into, I think, especially these two pieces, purpose statement and the annexation roadmap of how does it affect the final deliverables we're getting in here, but I'm gonna put some parameters as a facilitator of diving fully into what does this mean for planning, because that's your next step. And I want to get you to closure on this step. So we're going to use it to inform our high level approach. And then you go from there. And then we're going to get into the communication and community engagement. Tomorrow will be anything we didn't finish today, as well as the roles and responsibilities, as well as talking through timeline. We'll also have an opportunity to talk through next steps on contractor support. There's some dollars available in the grant that we're currently contracted through. And we want to give you all some time to talk through that and think through what supports do you need later on. And then ideally, we'll have a good enough land in place at this point. And what we'll do as a team is we'll synthesize this once again, basically revise all of these documents, send it to you all for what is hopefully a last e-vote to just kind of stamp it out based on what you all are talking about during these meetings. Okay. Any questions or concerns about where we're headed? All right, you all ready to get it done? Absolutely. Okay. All right, so we're gonna do name and organization a little bit more slowly, just so that you can keep reinforcing who each person is, as we've got newer folks who have come in midway through the process. And then I'm gonna ask you, which Nicolas Cage are you coming in as today? Just slide this up top so you can see all the Nicolas Cages. Is there somebody who would like to start us off? Yeah.
Hey, I'm Shannon. I am with the YPHA board, and my Nicolas Cage today is, I would say, focused. I'm really identifying with the sunglasses.
I'll join Shannon because I was gonna bring my six glasses.
Okay.
Well, that's really good because I was also going to say focused. Gail and Gary, City of Steamboat Springs City Council, so we're going to get some stuff done, right?
Okay.
City of Steamboat Springs. I'm somewhere right between the excited and focused, although the excited picture looks more like he's possessed. But I'm not possessed, but somewhere between excited and focused.
Okay. You want to come this way and then we'll go around?
Yeah, same focus and somewhat excited.
And will you just say your name and?
Okay, David, City of Steamboat Springs Council.
I'll go around here. I am moving out of bees, if I'm honest, and moving into happy, relaxed. And so I have had shingles for the past week, which is like bees for me. And so now I'm ready to just like hang out with y'all, get through the end of this process and feel relaxed after. So that's how I'm coming in.
Okay, Luther Torr, YMHA. I was wondering about bees, but now but focused is fine.
How are you doing, Emily?
Emily Katzman with Yuba Valley Housing Authority, and I too am feeling focused and also really like the sunglasses. I'm wearing sunglasses, but everyone shows focus. So I would say I'm between happy and excited, just having a really good day. It's really nice out. Got a workout in this morning, super early, so feeling like excited, happy, all those things. I'm also focused, but everyone else had to be something else. Had to be,
Jay Harrington, Round County. I would say I'm between the focused and stressed side right now. Hot, dry wind this time of year puts me automatically in the stress mode. And just having lunch with the sheriff and some of our emergency folks. Some tough times out there.
State fire restrictions yesterday,
Stage 2.
probably stage 2 next week already.
Yeah, I definitely also resonate with the words of happy and excited the most, but the visuals, not so much. Visual, if I had to pick on that, I'd want to look relaxed. Even though I can't pull off that mustache, but it'd be cool.
All right. With that, we'll just check in on our working agreements. Let me get rid of. There we go. Okay. Any of these working agreements that we want to make sure, don't all say focused at once. We heard we're gonna be focused today. But anything that you feel like we need to just raise as we come into this meeting and wrestle through the last decisions.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think just highlighting working together towards shared goals. Like we're gonna have to set some goals today. We're like finalizing some goals today, setting the roadmap today, and so it's gonna take a lot of collaboration to kind of figure out what those goals specifically are. I think we've been loosely floating around these ideas and like honing in today. So I think we've done a good job at maybe highlighting that.
I'll throw in one around, you all have gone through this process so far around trust the process, right? And as you go into like launching the next, your role on that one, I feel like changes to communicating out to others. Trust the process in a different way, which comes up for me out of like learnings that we had with DST, where we were also asking them to trust the process, and how they talked about the process impacted how the community saw the process, right? So there's like this next step of how are each of you going to instill trust in the process going forward with the community too?
I'm gonna follow up on that.
Yeah.
It was my observation on the DST. Shannon was on it. I'm not sure how much communication out of the DST ends up taking place. And I'm not sure what the expectation is for at least this group. What kinds of communication, level of communication we would have. And what's expected, I guess.
I mean, I think a piece of that is what we're gonna be talking about with the communication
Right.
plan and everything too. And there's I think a piece just at the working agreements level that we would have folks working one way in DST and talking another way online. And at an individual level, that's the way I'm kind of bringing it in of like, how do we each individually talk about what you all accomplished these meetings? All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. So throughout this, as we're narrowing in on these, what I'm gonna have us do on the different documents we're gonna be reviewing and revising together is I'm gonna have us do temperature checks first to see how close or far away are we from something that we can support. This isn't a final vote each time I do it. It's just to get a sense of like, okay, where do we need to focus in our time on to try and get us closer in? So we've got the purpose statement that we created last time. Well, can I have somebody read it off for me?
Together, we will create a path for Slate Creek neighborhood by providing homes for our community, prioritizing affordability, feasibility, and community support. As a group, we'll work to balance the following principles in our decision making.
Okay, that last sentence I added as I started just drafting the principles for you. And I went ahead and did, I used AI for this one to be able to synthesize multiple documents in a way that I knew if I drafted these, if Clark drafted these, we each have different versions. And so it felt a little bit like, let's start here and then go from here on what this kind of encapsulated on what could be a set of principles that you're going to be working to balance in your decision making. And I gave you two versions of it, basically a simple version and a more detailed version. Go ahead and take a minute to review. I'm going to have us do the temperature check on both of these. Guiding principles, simple, and then one on the detailed ones. Take a minute to review simple, and then I'm going to have us do our first temperature check. So let's go ahead and look at symbol first. Go ahead and give me your fist to 5 on how much could you support this being our final list of principles that we take into decision making. Give me your fist to 5 on 1, 2, 3. 4. All right. So it looks like we've got 1, 2, we've got, did I see 2 3s? You were 3? Okay. And then some more 4s. I'm going to have us now do a temperature check on the detailed version. And part of this is like, it impacts your map in some ways. If you have a more detailed version, it starts to say what things could look like. Whereas the simple gets broader or vague, but you have to fill in that detail. So I want to kind of see how these compare.
Yeah, you have two.
I did.
We didn't have.
No, we're not at consensus. I'm just,
In the spot.
Right, okay, that's okay. Well, you know. It's just a couple of words.
Mhm.
So they'll be there on this one too.
Okay, so.
overloaded it with. Let's go ahead and do our temperature check on the second one. Give me your Vista 5 on 1, 2, 3. Okay, so overall, it looks like we've got less support for the more detailed version, you have more support for the simple version. So now I want to open it up to talk through that. And hopefully reconnect here. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to simple. And I want to first hear concerns about simple, and then I want to hear open it up to things that we liked about simple that we didn't see as much in detail or had heartburn.
Yes, so I just kind of two general questions that just refresh my memory and want to make sure that we're all in consensus on, right? Which is, I think it's the same on 7, when we talk about, and income levels and this whole concept of, I mean, I don't recall if we're all in consensus on market rate, and I know I'm merging in the symbol and the detail. And then the other question is on 8, the part of a bigger solution, as one important piece of a broader regional. Did we land in terms of kind of regional, and what does that mean? Right? I mean, so there's one piece of a broader solution. When I think we start talking about regional, that then opens up back to, are we pushing this out to our neighboring communities? So those were my two questions I wanted to make sure where we stand as a group.
Can you clarify what you mean by that? Because the way I read number 8 is that it's just recognizing that Brown Ranch is one tool in a region. We're not going to be able to solve the region's problems if that's, there's a lot of them are not that we're pushing the problem out.
Interesting.
And that's how I read that. That was the intent.
And this piece might also pull from some of the engagement we did during the last phase, where we took small groups and talked through if we just did ranch, if we did infill, if we did neighboring communities, and comes out of the idea that no one solution is going to fit all of it. So I think it's getting to that piece a little bit.
Okay. And hang up is the word regional.
Okay.
I don't mind one piece of a bigger approach, right, to housing, which I think we all know Slate Creek is the one answer. But
As it really matters to conversation. Just because we're not talking about the regional aspects, right? We're talking about Slate Creek. This is just, they're just mentioning here.
Just when we come up, I'll defer to other. I appreciate other people's input. I just know whenever we have the conversations, when we're talking about RTA or whatever, it creeps out to its Hayden, right? Again, this has got to go beyond the limits of, of Steamboat or of the West End. And I'm just, not comfortable in any way, saying that this group supports that concept or doesn't support.
Well, I'm not sure I understand, but when I look at more regional, what we do at Slate Creek impacts the region. So if we don't affordable attainable housing at Slate Creek, then Hayden and other places will be impacted by that. So it is regional in that sense.
You okay with the argument that we need an RTA and so that we can move our housing problems to our neighborhoods?
Well, I don't know that the objective of housing problems to other communities, but I think
That's what's stated in conversations.
I haven't heard it, but I'm sure you have.
So again, that, as I say, is
I interpreted,
Voice.
yeah, I interpreted it the same way, and I also had the same hesitations about like regional versus like another word, I guess, to describe like what exactly we're discussing. Because I also feel the same way about not pushing the problem onto neighboring communities, as this is a problem that we're solving within the city.
One place where this surfaced quite significantly was in the phase of DST work where we explored primarily through community engagement, not actually with the DST as much, some different scenarios and where those came from. And this is different than the scenarios we've been talking about, but more like locational scenarios. And this comes from the common dialogue around like, well, why don't we do all of this through infill, or why don't we do all of it at Brown Ranch? Why don't we just allow, the reality is it's all end up in down valley communities anyway. And so what we tried to do is help people understand together some of the implications of those different outcomes. What would it look like if most of our housing needs were met in other down valley, or it's not always down valley, I guess here, but communities, or what would it look like if we try to accommodate, a significant portion of our housing need entirely as infill? And what does it look like if we do that at Brown Ranch? And ultimately, the things that I think people arrived at were that there is some degree of it's an all of the above approach that I think the people that were really gearing for an infill, only approach, and I said this before, as a big fan of infill development, it's really efficient and makes sense, but it would come with its own set of challenges. So the idea that that would be a much simpler way comes with issues. The idea that the not just housing demand, but the fiscal burden of managing that demand in the form of new growth on other communities that are more affordable, as essentially sort of allowing places just emerge into formal bedroom, essentially comes with its own set of regional costs and costs in those communities. And then the idea too of, we want Brown Ranch to be the place where the entirety of our solutions met, was also people I think say, that's probably not realistic either. So just to provide a little context around how that dialogue went in the last part of the process, hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, I would suggest either delete regional or come up with a different word.
Would it work to say we pursue Slate Creek as one important piece of a broader set of housing strategies to face our region's needs? But then you wouldn't want regions. You would still want Steamboat. The
No,
only,
I would just say stop. Did you write it up there?
okay, a broader set of
Period.
housing strategies.
Yeah.
And would you put in parentheses, infill? We don't have a good short hand term for like neighboring communities.
I don't think we would need to put anything else in parentheses.
Okay.
I think we're really talking within the boundaries of the housing authority, which is got a new levy and revenue source on this, and that's it's outside the city, but it's a subset of the entire region. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I think I think a person could make a case on either sides of this, because housing markets and labor markets are inherently kind of regional in these places. That's somewhat embedded in your reality. But if part of what it is to try to take ownership of the problem and the solution locally, I think that, it works. And like, if you just take 8 as it is now and essentially take regional out, you have something that still clearly says, it doesn't say, and it can't be regional. It just is basically saying like, we get that this is one piece of a larger strategy.
That's fine with me.
That's good.
Okay, let's talk then about 7. And I'm gonna ask this question. I'm gonna say a statement and you're gonna use your fist of 5 to say your agreement with the statement. I am open to including market rate housing at Slate Creek. Fist of 5. Okay, so then we have discovered that we don't have consensus in this area, to Gail's point. But I'd love to hear what folks think about what this describes with life stages and a range of income levels.
I would add to that. I think it's how you define market rate. Market rate If we're talking about a market rate home for a second homeowner, I don't see how it fits. If you're talking about market rate for the workforce of Steamboat, I have much less of a problem.
Could be market rate and deed restricted, right?
Well, not really. I mean, fundamentally, you know, if you want to just call it market rate, the basic question is what would it do in the market if it's unprotected in any way? We are getting more creative with ways we're using deed restrictions, not just for price appreciation, but for kind of targeting facets of the community that are either permanent or locally employed, so on and so forth, kind of trying to create secondary market almost there. But in a way, just to keep it simple, I would say like you have below market, you have market rate. The reason I even say below market instead of affordable is it's essentially, it gets rid of the question of affordable for whom. And if it's below market, it means you're doing something to essentially create a financial, you're changing the economics of it so that somebody's going to pay less than they would in a normal out in the rest of the market. One thing I'll just offer here is maybe as a way of sort of encouraging you guys that there's plenty of room in here to work with is we really designed the roadmap to have a space for you guys to explore this. And I don't think anything here pins you down on either. It's really, you know, even within the context of saying, if you guys wanted to agree today, then we're not going to do anything that isn't sort of either below market or protected for certain facets of our community, i.e. not second homes or things like that. You can still say that and with very clearly and like it fits up there. And the reason I'm saying that is because the range of price points hasn't been like there's nothing bracketing that to say price points within what segment of the market. And so you guys have a place in the roadmap that gets into the question of market segmentation and how it relates to need. And it just feels like that's the place to wrestle with these questions. If I was in your shoes and we want to evaluate feasibility and affordability, I just make sure to put everything on the table to see what we can do that's possible. And since you have that place to kind of mess around with that stuff, that might be a good place to kind of get at this question, partly too, so the community has a chance to weigh in on this as well. And that way, you know, you might be safe enough with it. You know, I totally understand the point, and also I think like it probably is safer than it looks. But I mean, you could also make some minor tweaks if you wanted to.
We'll go here and then here.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's premature to have this discussion. We don't have a development partner at the table. We don't have the dollars and the funding mechanisms put together. So we're going to have to keep as much on the table as possible to actually look at what can get built. I mean, personally, I'm not a huge fan of market and this type of thing, but I don't want to rule it out because we don't have the financial model put together yet, or the developers have the expertise to say what we can make. My concern on when you include market rate is when the delta between market rate and deed restricted get too close, then everything gets turned upside down. I've been in numerous city council meetings over the years where it's like the owners are coming in demanding that the deed restrictions get walked down because the delta is too close. So you have to be really careful how you structure that, but I don't think we decide that here.
I had a question that kind of Jay answered or his comment alluded to was, is this the time we have to decide? Like that was the first thing I was gonna say, like, do we have to decide, like, yes, the one market, no, we won't, do we just keep everything on the table? My follow-up question was, are we discussing these as our guiding principles for the entire 500 acres or for just the small piece that we want to do first? Like, I just would like some clarification from the group on how you're evaluating these things, because I agree that I'm typically not a fan of market rate. Think about what we're trying to provide and the people we're trying to provide it for. But if we're talking about the 500 acres, then yeah, sure, I probably could see some market rate in there. But if we're just talking about building potentially, 200 homes, then I can't see market rate there. So I think my answer, these are all the things going through my head as I'm thinking through this stuff. And for me, again, I agree with Jay. I don't know that this is the time to rule out anything or that maybe it is premature to say yes or no to this, but what sticks out to me is all income levels. Like, I don't think we're building for all income levels, right? Like, we're not building simply for the trillionaires and millionaires. So that, I think, is a problem. It's not all life stages and all income levels. We want to be wide with our income levels, but certainly we're not looking to build 12,000 square foot millionaire homes there, unless I am sorely mistaken.
So it may be more accurate to say people across a variety of life stages and income levels. To at least describe that it's not all one,
Right.
but it's not all.
It's certainly, in my opinion, it's certainly not.
I think number 7 is conflating issues. I think number 7 was intended to be housing options. Types. And number 1s and 2, or, 1 and 2 is getting at sort of
The
affordability. So to me, I think you should change number 7 to just say, we offer a range of unit types, size, and price points to serve people across all life stages.
Take out the income piece.
They have.
Yeah, because that's like that's stated in the funds. Yeah.
And to get back to your point, I would feel like we're just sort of talking about this first phase.
Some of our earlier discussions was take a phased approach to developing the project and focus on first phase, but try to set it up for success across the board. So I think we're kind of doing both.
Yeah, I think if you've got a guiding principle, it should be on a bigger stage.
And I'm not advocating for either way. It's just, and as I was evaluating the guiding principles, I was like, well, am I just thinking about the first phase or am I thinking about this whole parcel?
I think it's kind of unrealistic that we won't revisit the guiding
So
principles. You know, if we do an annexation this time, then have to do a subsequent one. I would think that we'd be revising some of the stuff. Based on what we learned.
and we can't lock in future city councils on this. That's new boards get to relook at things.
I mean, I would like to push on the whole definition of market rate. I mean, you define the market, it has a market rate. If you say the market is workforce housing, and people who work here, they define the market. It is not defined by some external force. It is an internal. People who work here, whatever they make, they can afford to live here. That's, to me, that defines the market and what market, at least for me, what market rate means. It has nothing to do with, I guess there are people here that can afford lots of stuff, but maybe it's not on Slate Creek site. If it's workforce. I'm not part of the workforce.
Knowing that we're moving towards revising the number 7 so that it's about offering a range of unit types rather than talking about income levels at all, does that address that?
Okay, no, that addresses the
Okay.
point about income levels, but it doesn't address the market rate. Okay, market, like I said, is defined by who is buying. Market, if it's workforce market, it is not the same as what's the market for housing in Steamboat Springs, right? Very different.
Maybe said another way, when we have the conversation about market rate or not, which I don't necessarily think should be happening today. But when we do, we need to make sure that we all have an agreed upon definition of market
I
rate.
agree with that, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, could we go to number 1 really quick that Tom just highlighted?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we could just say live and or work in Steamboat Springs, because this makes it seem like you have to live and work in Steamboat. And I think that there's a lot of people who have been pushed out because of who would like to live in Steamboat, but they've been pushed out to Craig, or they've been forced to leave the area because the cost of housing is high. So I would just like to say live and or work.
I think that's a good one.
Any concerns about that?
No, I think that includes the elderly population. That is now a growing force in terms of affordable housing.
I mean, it's one of the things you guys are really trying to get out there, going back to the previous conversation, the idea of like full-time residents. some.
Yeah, I think like I know a lot of friends who've had to move to like Craig or Hayden or, you know, South, and they would have loved to have stayed in Steamboat. They were renting in Steamboat, they got priced out and their jobs are still here. So I just don't want to exclude them and be like, well, we only are focused on the people who are both living and working here right
One of the, I think it actually reads fine the way it is now. And I think your point, or I'm saying with the change you're making, you could, but there's becoming a challenge in certain places around the somewhat parochial nature, which is understandable, but of local housing programs that have a workforce, like a local workforce requirement. The idea is like we're spending money, local tax dollars to provide housing for our workforce. The problem with it, and it's especially challenging in these markets where like the labor market's super tenuous. But once you handcuff somebody's housing stability to their job, sometimes it does become a little bit of a, like that's, and that's what everybody's doing. That's sort of making these residency requirements for the most part. So it's just, you know, there's an even simpler way to say this, which might just be like, we prioritize housing for, you know, full-time residents of Steamboat Springs. And that way you don't, the principal doesn't necessarily orient you towards a work requirement or anything like that. And maybe you guys don't want that, but if that's the idea, you can just say it very directly.
I think the order covers that. Even more work, and I think we're going to see, even with the recent housing needs assessment, you know, the individual one, just in the last 2 or 3 months, I've seen incredible stressors from our commuting workforce on gas prices and other things, where suddenly the money that folks have saved to move away from the community, commute in, is wiped out, and they're struggling to get by. I've had more people in my office crying over commuting costs literally in the last week than I've had in years.
There's a whole affordability index based on that called the H+T index that you guys might want to weave into your work.
I do share your concern. I mean, from the perspective of certainly don't, I mean, our focus is on workers, right? So whether it's and or how, did you revise it in a different way?
Yeah, just changing to Andrew work.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and,
Is it right to say Steamboat Springs and not Rock County?
I think it can be either, but I appreciate what Jay said earlier about Valley Housing Authority does have its boundaries, and if that's it, working within the city, then it makes sense to keep it that way. Just for context, though, I think all of the deed restrictions that YBJ has are route count. If there's a work requirement, it's a route county requirement.
Yeah. So I was just kind of thinking of aligning that they're all the same, so there's not like confusion up there.
I agree. I'm happy to say route county.
This is us mentioning.
As a council, we've decided SDR monies outside of, I mean, we've vacillated, right? I mean, back on the SDR monies, we've had some discussion, but in terms of whether that stays in Steamboat or whether the YBJ territories, so we have to pay it.
Yes, but I don't think the money is this thing, right? Like, it's like, I guess if you like worked,
Store.
if you worked at the Clark store, you know,
It just gets complicated when you, I think, when you start using money for infrastructure, but so again, right? Yeah, I'm getting too far down the path.
But the money we'd be using for infrastructure would be in the city, though, right? Because it's gonna be an annexation.
Most likely.
For this purpose.
I was gonna go with, since we're recording, I'm using that for our note taking right now. But I think it's helpful, even though it's clunky to see me pop out of full screen mode, to just capture these changes here for us, so then we can make decisions on these in real time. I think I've been cut them out. Go back into any other items that we need to troubleshoot.
Well, the one thing I didn't see in the guiding was, the attitude of collaboration between the entities that are involved. I mean, that's been stated on and on and on, but it's not in the guiding principles. I mean, maybe it doesn't need to be.
It's in verse.
It is. It's everywhere, but not in the guiding principles. And I don't know if it's necessary.
What do folks think about that?
I guess I see these more as the guiding principles for the physical. And we certainly use we a lot, so that implies collaboration and partnership, right?
I don't know if it has to be in the guiding principle, if it's in the purpose statement, saying we, but I'm open.
Yeah, same. I don't feel like a desperate need for it to be in here, but open to it if others feel that it should be included.
We don't want to catch you.
Well, before we move on, I like the language in number 9 for the detail, like responsible and resilient infrastructure over responsible and sustainable growth. But I just, the idea of like, I don't know, I like resilient infrastructure a lot. That stood out to me.
She's saying the guiding principles detail, she prefers that to.
The number 9 from the detailed instead of 9 from the simple.
Oh, okay.
That thing that I really like, the resilient infrastructure part. Like it.
Say that again.
In our strategic plan,
Oh, okay.
resilient infrastructure.
Would anybody be opposed to changing it to resilient infrastructure? Then,
Sorry for the wordsmithing, but I would just suggest that rather than specifically listing water, sewer, energy with different infrastructure types, we just keep it broad infrastructure utilities. So that it's more open-ended.
so keep the description from simple, but change the kind of bolded text to responsible and resilient infrastructure.
You know, there's a potential, maybe overly analytical, but there's pretty significant different way to understand the discussion around future generations in those two, which is both an important concept in here. And with 1 and 9 more detailed, one could read from that what I would say is a trap, which is that like we don't want to pass along costs to future generations. But if that's captured as a principle in the context of like development and long-term financing, that's going to be essential to being able to make any affordable project feasible. So, and especially given that at the end of the day, like a lot of this, I think is about future generations. So I think we maybe just want to make sure that the idea that part of what we're trying to do is invest today with an understanding that the benefits are for people who may not even be here yet, may not be born yet, but we have to do this to make our community work well for the future. That's different than being like, well, we don't want to incur costs for the future. Like you're going to, no matter what. So the question is like, what are the nature of those costs and what are they providing for the future people that aren't able to talk with us about this now? Just maybe I'm overthinking that, but that's a major.
I'm happy to leave it as it is. I think it was just a call out that like, I like the idea of being resilient for future generations. But I'm happy to keep it.
Well, you can mix and match. I mean, we can mix and match.
But I don't think it needs like that much conversation though.
Yeah.
I like the idea of swapping the headline from the detail,
Oh, there you go.
being the description.
Yeah, that's what I'm just simple.
There you go.
All right, so, good.
The other one I have. That is number 6. I'm not, we talked about allowing for other uses besides just residential. number six in simple is pretty broad. Number six in the guiding principle detailed is a little more narrow, quite honestly. And it basically says transit, food, and childcare.
Oh.
Does that preclude other non-residential uses? Which,
So it's kind of like all the expanded definitions just seem to get too wordy and too broad. In my, that's
yeah,
why
I just want to make sure we're open and we're coming to the same thing, because I thought we talked about allowing a greater mixed uses such as residential, and that might allow some retail, some commercial uses.
I like the simple version
Yeah, the simple version.
that keeps it more broad.
So I'm just hypothetical. Is a liquor store a basic need?
It's COVID.
They were essential employee in COVID.
Is some other retail, non-residential use a basic need, or are we talking supermarket? That's it.
Which number is this? I'm so sorry.
Six.
Six.
This is important to the sentence I kept listening
I
to.
mean, I saw a supermarket in there. Food, but that might be something.
Yeah.
Do you think six is simple is good the way it is, or?
No, I think he's getting tripped up on basic needs.
Yeah, it doesn't allow for sort of a, I mean, if it's a real neighborhood, it's gonna have a mix of uses.
So you want to say daily needs?
You can just get rid of them without traveling across town.
I was gonna say the same thing, but you just stop it at live well.
Well, healthy connection.
Yeah, I think again, this is the conversation that we're going to need to have. I don't we get into the details of like, do we prioritize basic needs? Do we, like, what comes first? But we want to keep things open and, absolutely, I'm open to retail, commercial, but, what's the cost analysis on that? And I think that we're,
My point is.
yeah, so
Sure we-
I'm happy to like just keep it like without traveling across town period, or just one period, like. Want to keep this simple and.
One of the, this may be too plain or wonky, but one of the terms that is often used is complete neighborhoods, you know, which is the idea of, it's a neighborhood where you have a variety of things
Right.
beyond residential. Ideally within walking distance, whether that's a grocery store, liquor store, or, you know, library, varies within the context of that particular place and what is feasible in the market. But, I think that, you know, I get at the idea. There's probably different ways for us to tweak this to get at that point. Sure.
That's sort of the point I'm making, and I'm not sure.
No, I think you're right, because, you know, like Jay said, well, I think of my neighborhood as just like my street, my cul-de-sac, right? Like that's my neighborhood. I don't have a grocery store in my cul-de-sac. I don't have a library, in my, you know what I mean? So like what is a neighborhood too? I think we were still coming to consensus on that. Is it just like your street, your cul-de-sac, the house is there? Is it the radius? Yeah. But to keep things broad, I think we should just stop it at like, well,
Books bill, I delete after live well. Don't worry, I've got the previous version still, so let's do that. All right, I'm going,
Sorry, you could also say, just since it does feel like it kind of stops real quick, you could say providing residents access to a variety of, you know, needs and opportunities, you know, really widens it open. That could be anything from parks to retail to childcare, maybe. This is silly, but what does it live well?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I like that. Or even in the. Yeah. Mix of services or something like that.
That opens it up a little bit.
all right. I'm gonna, do another temperature check just with where we are at this point. And see how close are we with these simple principles. Go ahead and give me, yeah, we are. I was just giving folks a minute to read. Everybody have time to review? Okay, go ahead and give me your fist of 5 on 1, 2, 3.
Be a 5 with deleting one word.
Okay.
Before what?
In number 4, can we just delete the word actually? We design what can be built and sustained.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's good.
Good catch.
Now I.
Quick pathway to 5, that was pretty nice.
Okay. There you go. Okay, so then we're gonna scratch the detailed version. Oh no, did I just delete? I deleted it in the detailed. Okay, deleting it in simple. Great. Okay, so then we've got our guiding principles. Word. Okay, so just want to do a quick check-in. We're about an hour in. We're about to go to annexation roadmap. Do folks need a break at all right now? Tom does. Okay, I'm gonna have this keep rolling, and then this compared tomorrow we'll move around a little bit, but it's just gonna be a lot of sitting open discussion today, so just bear with me. Let's go ahead and go into the annexation roadmap. And I'm actually gonna hand it over to Clark to just see off kind of the thinking that went into, we went through a whole phase of kind of revision, adding things into the document that we had created, and then creating something that was maybe a little easier to read for folks too. So Clark, will you talk us through this?
Yeah, and just in everybody's best interests, we don't need to stay long on this one other than to say everything that is in here was built from things you already worked on and got great feedback from people who had a chance to look at this early and say, cool, I can't read that. And I was like, me neither. We're going to move to a new way of looking at it. So, but this was where I felt like it was important rather than us going in and just kind of retooling within our own design first to come in and really build within the structure that you guys had developed already. And without going too much into the detail of sort of small moves, I think it's easier just to go in and look at the big picture. And so you can go to the next slide. And in a way, so this is the slide that was in the council packet. I actually think the next slide over is a little nicer to look at. Just a bit more graphic. It's the same thing. It's just a little easier to look at. So a couple things that were important to be able to do. One is we had gotten to a place where the milestones themselves were often clearly a milestone. In other cases, it was more sort of a stage of work. In other cases, it was more of a kind of an activity that needed to happen, a discrete activity. And so tried to begin adding some structure in around, what's what. And in particular, to begin looking at this in the context of sort of project phasing. And so ultimately landed on 4 different phases. And then tried to distill down some of the key kind of activities, tasks, and deliverables that we had identified. So just to be clear, like milestones as a concept are still in here, and everything we built around is very much still in here. But this was intended to try to get you guys sort of transitioning towards a scope, which will include some key milestones and deliverables, but also will need to be organized around more of a sequential or parallel running tasks, so that whoever's going to tackle that whether it's us or other folks who are helping you guys, has a clear actual forward moving roadmap, right? Just walking through the high level, each sort of phase and what they are about. And by the way, if it's helpful, this kind of outline version talks through. Hopefully people got a chance to review that. I know it's not, Hemingway or anything, but hopefully it provided a little bit of context for some of these changes. There was actually a much longer memo that I wrote that went through in somewhat excruciating detail, like why all these things were changed or moved or how they landed where they did. Not to say there were that many changes, but just I wanted you guys to understand. So if you're the type of person who wants that inside look at it, let me know and I can make sure you have that. That was more of the project team looked at it. So, okay, back to the big picture. Phase one is really some of the work that we're doing now, but there's going to be more that you guys are going to need to do. I would think of this as all the stuff that needs to happen in order to execute a successful project. One thing that, at least in our work, we found over and over again is the work you put in at the front end to sort of set everything up and build the systems, teams, and clarity around what you're going to do makes all the difference. And so really making sure that you're setting everything up before sort of a more formal external launch happens is really what that's about. And it incorporated in a lot of the things you guys talked about in terms of decision making and governance, but then wrapped in these more mundane ideas around project scoping. And we actually need to complete a real engagement strategy. We're going to have some ideas we're going to talk about, but those aren't a strategy. Same thing vis-a-vis communications. So organized a lot of the different ideas that at one point had just sort of been listed in here under governance and put them into more discrete buckets. And again, I'll just kind of go through each of these at the high level. Phase two, this is really about sort of what's possible here. What can we do? And it looks across a number of different domains. Obviously, feasibility is a critical one that if you were to go back to that original graphic, that was sort of the original pillar of what is now called assessment, which, that also it folds in the constraints analysis, but then also as we worked on that in our second go around as a group, we folded in the work around understanding housing needs and thinking about market segmentation, and goes back to what we were talking about earlier, like what needs do we really want to meet? Who would we be wanting to serve? Who is this housing available to? So understanding all of those things. And then also folding in the sort of scale and phasing plan with the idea that we have talked at various points about some specific ideas around what the right scale and how to think about phasing. And the suggestion here, and you guys said we're going to need to finalize that. The suggestion here is that fits best once you've done some of this other work. So rather than sort of falling into the temptation to be like, we have to have that dialed in now. Sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. When you get those little tiny fractions of a popcorn kernel, it's like hanging out at the top of my throat. I'm like, oh man, that's really rough. I think I got it. So that's in there. And then I think the other thing that was not really anywhere in this part of the project before, what came much later, was understanding the resource opportunities and needs. And so we originally had funding kind of down on the far right side, as though we'd get through the development plan and then we'd figure out funding. And the idea here is we would want to start with funding much earlier, because really any conversations around feasibility and constraints has to, at least to some degree, fold in an understanding what resources are available. Because feasibility is, at the end of the day, entirely based on how much money you have. And that doesn't mean we're going to know everything. I can appreciate, from all the different partners' perspective, it's we don't know how much money we can invest in this. But beginning with a base understanding of funding needs and opportunities will be really, really helpful. Stop me along the way if anything, you want to jump in. Otherwise, I'll just keep going through and then we can dig in and discuss. Phase three is really where we get into planning. And so integrated in a new task, and actually I think in the outline version, this might be in a different spot, but it doesn't really matter, which was, developing some strategies. One would expect that coming out of phase two, there's going to be a lot of understanding around possibilities, but also problems, right? And in any normal thing in human life, when you're presented with like, oh shoot, we've got some problems and some barriers, some needs, you would then spend some time thinking about what can we do about it. And so opening up the planning stage with, before we get into anything around the sort of actual scenario aspects, just thinking about, well, what are some of the strategies that respond to things we learned in the assessment, right? If one of the things we learned, for example, we were talking about water. If one of the things we learned is water is a really significant constraint, are there strategies we can think about from a design perspective that might influence and create some space for us to work with vis-a-vis water? And that's just one example of those kinds of things. So it gives us the space to be creative and think about, well, there's a problem here, but maybe there's some things we can do about it. Then we get into the work of preparing for scenario planning. And I'm not going to go through a lot of information on what scenario planning involves, although it might be valuable as part of this conversation to make sure we're all on the same page there. What I will say is that for the type of scenario planning that I think you guys are moving towards, which is not a kind of clear, like numeric, black and white, but more evaluating physical planning concepts and understanding the trade-offs and outcomes of doing things one way versus another. And then ideally folding in a clear evaluative measure of like affordability and feasibility takes some work to get ready for. And so there's some data that needs to be collected. There's what are we going to actually be, what is important to us that we will want to measure when we're looking at different scenarios. And there's a lot of great engagement opportunities there. And then to some degree, you want to almost create a palette of the building or development typologies that you're going to play with in scenario planning. So the scenario planning will still give you plenty of room to mess around with different ideas, but you probably want to like reduce your range from giant skyscraper to, tiny shack and come up with, a handful of things in the middle that feel like a really good fit for what people want to see at Slate Creek. So we can come up with like, the types of things we want to do here are probably this kind of stuff. And I think there could be some really fun kind of physical design engagement that we can do to get people honing in on those questions. And it will also be a place where we can get more clarity around the question of like, what types of uses do we want to evaluate? Then we get into the very fun and hopefully effective work of scenario planning. And then, really the idea there is to be able to explore different kind of development concepts and see how they do, right? It's sort of a race of, this one does really well in these places and this one does really well in these ways. And if we've created good metrics, we'll be able to evaluate how different strategies work. And then ultimately, I think I mentioned this last time, most often it's not just that you pick, 3 different scenarios and in the end you're like, we like scenario 3, but rather the intuition you develop, the insights you get from comparing help you isolate. Like these things work pretty well. If we took the best parts of 2 and the best parts of 1 and the best parts of 3, we might be onto something. And then you bring that into sort of a preferred alternative. You test that a little bit, you find more problems and you refine it down. And that's how you can get to kind of a final preferred scenario. And then the idea would be that if you use the modeling approach that at least we had been talking about much earlier in this whole work, you'd be at the place where you're really close to completing a neighborhood plan, a final plan. That's not to say there's no more work there, but you'd be in a good spot for that. And then at that point, you shift over to the final phase, which is really sort of what's the development strategy? We have the plan now. How are we going to execute on this? And this is where we shift from the more hypothetical in terms of funding concepts and financing strategies and creative models, but we've actually, we now have something we're trying to do, and we've identified the things we want to do. And we're trying to actually execute on those concepts. Same thing with at this point, you want to be solidifying an approach to, or really moving forward, hopefully with an approach to how development partnerships can work, coming up with a clear sort of strategy for annexation. What do we need in an annexation strategy? How do we want to approach that? Because as you guys have said, that can be variable. Both of you spoke to this depending on the situation, like what is actually, there's no like template for here's what we need out of every annexation strategy. And then, getting clear on what the development timeline is that people can plan things like, when do we actually need to put this on the ballot, so on and so forth. There's a suite of work that'll need to happen around policy and systems. That could potentially be done within the context of the neighborhood plan as well. There are certainly approaches that essentially develop a code for the project as a part of the planning process. But either way, I think it's useful to sort of put in there a space where we have to kind of create alignment between what the plan says and some of what the sort of more design level, engineering level specs of everything would be. And make sure it all works. And ideally, as part of getting the final plan, we've highlighted any, serious disconnects so that people aren't like at this point where we think we're moving forward and all of a sudden the engineers are like, you can't do any of this. So, but I think this is more sort of a much more refined level. And then at that point, it's annexation and moving to a vote. There's clearly less detail there because my sense is that at this point, us getting highly detailed on what that looks like and how it would happen is unnecessary. Although there are some, comments in the outline that speak to some of the elements of it. So that's a quick overview. The only other thing I'll note, if you can move that mic thing at the bottom, is there's a set of kind of cross-cutting activities that are going to be important. Ongoing and effective community outreach and communications, a community engagement strategy that is really threaded through this. And, I would encourage you guys to avoid something that sort of identifies a bunch of tactics right now and then tries to sort of fit them into this, but instead really go through and design a process based on what you want to do here. And then there's probably, you guys talked about the development advisory, our experience on this, and not that we know everything, but we've had a lot of success when you embed some of the project leadership and collaboration and problem solving into different types of community teams. There will clearly need to be like a project management team. You guys have identified the development advisory team, but we've had a lot of success with community engagement teams. And there might be a sort of a technical team or that's part of the advisory, but so those are some structures that we thought would be valuable to sort of cut across the whole project and take, at one point, those were sort of milestones in and of themselves, or at least a couple of them. And it felt like those are more things that are going to cut through the whole process. So we'll stop there and see. Let's let you guys talk.
So I'm gonna have us do that same thing with an initial temperature check. If this is our final roadmap, you're gonna go ahead and give me your fist to 5, and then we'll jump into discussion. So go ahead on the count of 3, give me your fist to 5. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got at least 3 2s. So I want to start with those folks to kind of bring in what concerns do we have about this as a process.
I think these aren't individual phases. I think it's just more of a workflow of moving the project forward, and a lot of this is going to happen at the same time. So I see it more as a flow to get to the final project than phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3, because each one of those phases could, I mean, each one of these phases could take a year or two if you actually go step, which based on the work we've done already is a more urgent need. So that's just how I read that.
I read it the same way.
I was gonna say something similar, like my problem or why I was a 2 with this is the idea that it happens after another instead of concurrently, I think. And it could just be the visual, but I think like some of the groundwork, like finding, or some of the assessment, like partnership opportunities, assessing funding needs, like those could be in the groundwork as well. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure that it needs to be so isolated. In general, I think everything is captured in this, like in terms of an entire roadmap, but I do think that there could be people working on stuff in phase 3 while we're doing some of phase 1. Like, I think that it's gonna have to be more of a flow. like that versus we need to do everything in the blue before we can touch the purple, before we can touch the yellow.
I didn't read it that way. I read it more like Jay read it, like if you had a Gantt chart, these are gonna.
No, I think he didn't read it that way. That's his problem with it.
I was saying that this would lead to like, we gotta do this, this and this, and it should be redone into.
Presented is.
Yes.
It should be redone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree that that's the way it's presented. I was just assuming that this was like, these are
For
cross.
what it's worth, I wanted to arrange it more like that because I see the same thing. I think there are certain things that should not be like that are sequential in here for sure. What I wanted to avoid though was something that looked that much of a departure from what you guys have been working on. But as an example, like a clear example is the funding piece. Like what I would do differently actually is just like a funding strategy is like an ongoing component, and you'd probably develop a team that's focused on that. And they're going to be working on different things throughout the project, but it's not start and stop. So it was somewhat, yeah, I agree with you guys. And I think somewhat limited just by sort of trying to make sure the visual reflected what you guys have done. But yeah, I think that's totally makes sense. You want certain things are going to definitely flow. And I think you want to be clear that certain things should happen before other things. So looking at like, what are the things that to get to a next stage does matter. The only final thing I'll say about phasing is however you guys decide to do it, we have found that like community members really can wrap their heads around a project that's broken into stages much better because it's a narrative. And actually, a lot of times what we use is questions to sort of wrap that narrative around like groundwork. Our question is, how are we going to do this? What we often have as phase two is like, what matters and what are our needs? And then we get into like, what do we want? And then how do we get there? The different things, but you need to structure this in something that doesn't feel like a Titanic mission for the average member of the community in ways that are like, oh, okay, so we're gonna do this. They need to be able to wrap their heads around it. The phasing doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go along with what you said before. This is a workflow process. There are iterations as well. Funding changes all the time and it changes what you're going to build. And so it's pretty much a management structure. I don't know whether phase one's a good term, but organizing is good. It's a process. You have to organize before you actually, take on specific tasks. So I'm not looking at this as very do blue, do purple, orange and green.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's just a workflow diagram.
What were you gonna offer?
Oh, no, I read this as like the Titanic and the Titanic mission seems so overly detailed. I think the thing that sticks out to me most is getting the entitlements for the property are paramount before you go through this whole roadmap of everything all over again. I think the community, we overestimate the amount that the community wants to have input on this project after 3 failures.
Underestimate or overestimate?
Underestimate. We overestimate how much input what are the questions we're gonna ask them? Of course, we want to have their engagement, but are we really gonna be going back to the community to ask them what type of units they want to have? Or, that's something that the market's gonna dictate. We're going through it with Cottonwoods right now, right? We're learning, what AMIs are hard to sell. So those are all flow things. It just seems like if we go through all the minutia of everything to get to the community vote, we all may be exhausted or the process might be exhausted again. I don't know. I kind of always stick to the keep it simple, stupid. And this seems like it's the first time we've ever looked at this property, this roadmap. And I just think a lot of that base work has been done. I could be totally wrong, but it just feels like a really heavy lift going through all this. That being said, I agree that it wouldn't be a phase thing. It would sort of all kind of mesh together all at once.
When we started talking about phasing, I was, in my mind, I had, phase one is there's this prototypical project. Phase two is the next phase, it's something bigger. So, I mean, so I think, it's from like maybe a definition standpoint. But again, I don't see those as entirely separate items.
I have to follow up, Dave. And this is, I think I just need some clarity because you're saying now, keep it simple. But I thought, and this could be me being mistaken, I thought that the group who voted down Brown Ranch, like the group that organized and against it, I thought their whole argument was there's not enough detail, there's not enough information. We don't know all of these things. So can you kind of remedy those for me? Because I thought that it failed the first time because that group said there's not enough information. But now you're saying keep it simple, we don't need all this information. So how do those two work together?
I think if you're focusing, in my mind, if I'm focusing on just building 250 houses, as a first phase conceptual product to put out there, whether it's all affordable or there's a component market rate, and getting that passing through into the community. I think it's a much simpler process than what we were talking about with Brown Ranch. I mean, that was $1.5 billion project. Numbers, it was moving really fast with a lot of big numbers out there. This would be different in asking for an annexation with 250 single family homes of some type of size, and a commercial designation area from the community. I honestly believe if you put it on a ballot, it'll pass tomorrow. Because the need is there, everybody knows the need's there, and figuring out the details and the funding afterwards, if it's not gonna cost the taxpayer any more money. The fact that we have STR funds now that have been allocated, I think it's a lighter lift. And maybe I'm wrong in thinking that we're gonna be able to engage developers, but I think we have a history of this property now, and developers that are, I mean, are they gonna be willing to put their time and effort in without knowing that there's an entitlement fee?
I wanted to see, Shannon, did you want to jump in at all?
I was
And
just
then we'll go to-
wondering, yeah, like
Yeah.
following up on what Angelica said, because it was clearly a majority of folks that thought there was not enough detail in the project. So I'm wondering how we kind of present this to them, saying like, we're actually gonna give less details again, despite what we heard from the community before, and just push forward with this project instead of like more build as it is now with the phases workflow.
Emily?
I'll just say that what Dave is offering up is a legitimate pathway. We could have a much simpler annexation. With a lot less detail going into it, and then if the property were successfully annexed, work through the subdivision and subsequent entitlements process. That is a legitimate pathway. It's just very different than this.
I mean, from the people that I've been talking to, just since the constraints analysis came out, and I'm not saying I represent a majority out there, 60% of people, but I'm just saying that the people that were spearheading the vote no and the Citizens for Better Plan, they said they wouldn't have a problem with the 250 houses in a commercial definition, and they wouldn't form an organization to fight it. And so, well, what level of funding in detail? We want to know what the taxpayer liability would be going out, and is there going to be a taxpayer liability to develop this, or is it going to be through funding mechanisms we already have in place? Those are questions that, could belay a lot of that.
Where did the 250 come from?
On the constraints analysis, I mean, just looking at what.
There's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Depending on what
I was just.
Even that's based on a known, EQR, and I mean, I think one of the things you guys probably want to wrestle with is, how much, there's a lot of, I think there are varying perspectives on where community support is and isn't and what it's about. And I've noticed that for a while. When we did the situation assessment and interviewed a lot of people, including, all the folks who were behind the opposition, there was not only detail, but it also was actually perception that YVHA had only involved certain parts of the community and didn't sufficiently involve others. So I think if you guys wanted to go forward with an approach that doesn't have community engagement deeply as a part of it, you want to go in eyes wide open with that. And it might be, if there's a sufficient level of confidence, it's certainly faster and easier. But it would be something you really want to like feel strong in. This approach embeds the idea that there are still differences of opinion within the community about what makes sense at Brown Ranch, and not only in terms of an overall comfort level with any development, but also there's parts of the community that will probably be pushed back on the idea that this is something much smaller. And so I think there are people who were on the other side who will potentially be oppositional to a 200 unit project. The other thing that this assumes is that you're going to need to do work to evaluate the feasibility of something that is going to get built there. Very significant thing to look at, and as it pertains to a project that's like under 300 units. There's no guarantee at all that you're going to be able to build anything out there that's that small. Like extending the trunk infrastructure and thinking about sizing, like you want to know something that's going to scare developer away. They'd be like, why would we do that when we
From economy of scale standpoint.
it's really hard to pull off unless you want to develop a totally different type of product, probably in the county. It doesn't have the same infrastructure and service requirements. And then you're getting into a different conversation about what that would look like within the county and whether the county wants to take that on, and then what the service agreements would be with the city. So the point is, there would be some work to do to understand those things. The final point is, I agree though, that if you decide you want to go with something of much smaller scale, you can cut out a lot of this, because I don't think the scenario planning concept that we talked about way before applies as much to something that is really small. It applies to a larger kind of planning context. We're really trying to understand how different pieces fit together in a physical, layout. Once you get to the building level, there are things you can use with similar tools. It's more of sort of a like a development prototype analysis, where it's like understanding pro forma plus building types and how they function, and you could still evaluate them, but it's a little different than like development scenarios from a traditional thing, which is fine. It's just I want to lay out the things that are assumed in here. So
Scenario planning could include a scenario that was a much smaller scale in a different form, as well as a scenario that pretty much maximized the number of units we could do in another form.
yeah,
I'm assuming that's what the various scenarios would incorporate. Rather than saying, we're gonna do 4 scenarios that incorporate 250 single family homes.
100%, definitely. Yeah. And then the question would just be, are you looking at those different alternatives within a single sort of static geographic area? Or are you allowing your scenario exploration to actually look at a larger footprint versus a smaller footprint? And that's something to talk to. When I went ahead to just help inform this, I talked to some folks who do this, and one of the guys was really like, it'd be better to basically to constrain them to all the same geographic footprint so that it's like for like. But another guy was like, yeah, or you can use it though to evaluate the pros and cons of a larger scale versus smaller scale thing. Either way, when it comes to unit count, for sure. I think that would definitely be what you'd be looking at.
Doesn't the constraint analysis cover a lot of the issues that Clark just brought up? I mean,
Yeah.
if it's a mile and a half of roads period that can be absorbed in a reasonable time frame to add, that pretty much defines the planning area.
Yeah, it does.
I kind of came up with the 250, thinking that the commercial would probably take about 100.
Yeah, commercial actually doesn't take up that much because they're not water users. So.
Well, in commercial, I mean, again, I don't know what analysis has already gone into this, but it'd be really interesting to find out who wants to build what kind of commercial out there with that much residential.
You mean
It wouldn't be
developers?
it wouldn't be like the type of commercial that's supporting the surrounding development. It might be more like storage or things like that, which is different.
Well, I'm talking about getting the entitlement in place so that doing the proof of concept with 250 houses, and then you have those entitlements there. You'll attract the people. If the phase works, then the subsequent phases are going to be much easier. I think.
Well, the other thing to address your concern, and probably a good segment of the community's concern with looking at this is we don't know the timing of this. When you look at this, you're thinking, oh my God, this is 2 years
Totally.
of work, right? You could put this in a Gantt chart, have the same type of thing and have it over a 12-month period.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's.
That's probably about what, what it looks like, yeah.
So if you were to take that,
Depending on how aggressive you are.
add a time component to it, it might alleviate some of the Titanic approach.
Certainly, I would say like phase one, the first three. And I still think, the point being that was already made, like, that doesn't mean nothing happens in the development strategy work up to that point. But certainly when you think about like the portions of this that are about getting to a final plan, where we're like, all right, this is the thing we're going to do, right? 100%, and the one that I would say is really nice to get dialed in is I would recommend making sure you're groups in a group before you start doing stuff, just because it's so like the idea that you're delaying, everybody freaks out about delaying the launch of a project by 2 months. And then we did it kind of with the DST. We didn't have our communications stuff together, and it had a huge impact on the effectiveness of that. Like if we just spent a little more time getting on communications, it would have helped a lot.
And one of the takeaways we had from the meeting with the folks at Fraser was that they brought in a developer that was working on the capital stack at the very beginning. And, that could all go hand in hand and come in early, and you'd answer a lot of questions if that happens early on in the process.
And that was the idea of sticking the funding concept up front rather than at the end.
Lou was trying to get in a bit ago.
Yeah, actually, those thoughts are already gone.
Oh, those are.
I mean, fundamentally, I think we can come up with a workflow that outlines, here's what could be built based on the constraints analysis, and here's when it could be built. The concern that I have and have had is how are we engaging the community in all of this? Because people have to vote on the annexation. There was plenty of information in the community development plan. Lots of detail. It's, 18,000 square foot grocery store. That was it. 10,000 square
Let's not
foot.
go backwards.
No, but I mean, those,
Let's not go backwards.
but those things were never either communicated well, or we never engaged the entirety of the community. And that has to happen. The biggest complaint I've heard, from guys like Kelly and stuff is, well, nobody ever asked me. I was never, how could I not be engaged? I didn't know what was going on. Well, there were lots of opportunities for people to know what was going on. And so we need to be much more effective at communicating what's going on and engaging with people.
If I had to guess, that was the big crux of it, right? Is that the engagement that YBJ got was people that needed housing or had, it wasn't a lot of people that were gonna bear the brunt or the tax of the project. And I think this one might be different because the funding source is already there and we're talking a much smaller scale. When you start looking at the numbers and the annexation agreement, and I just had it out just a week ago or less, and you go back through and you read through those big amounts, it's a totally different project. And I think, we've been reinforcing the need for affordable housing. I don't think there's anybody that denies that we need it. And I think Brown Ranch is or Slate Creek is the most applicable place to put it. Especially single family, which I think is arguably the biggest deficit we have.
I'm gonna shift the conversation, so if anyone has anything else to say on that.
I will just sort of reiterate that the annexation process can be as simple or complex as we want to make it as a community. There's some statutory requirements that the city has to follow, but other than that, it's a process that we design as a community. So I just offer that up to say is, I believe in this process, particularly if we're talking about multiple phases or a larger scale, but we can make it as simple as we want to.
And I mean, I absolutely concur that there are multiple paths and what tool do we use to evaluate those? paths?
I don't think this, yeah, I
Right,
think,
right, no, but I mean, exactly that, right? So from the, but I think we also, one of the things, we talk about from a scenario planning is having those different levers, right? In terms of being able to pull the different levers, what makes sense, right? Yeah, from an infrastructure perspective, from a fiscal perspective, et cetera. And, you know, all of us in this room would love nothing more than to put a shovel in the ground as soon as possible, but at what expense, right? And it's not just dollar cents. If we do something like that, I mean, are we limiting ourselves? Or what are the consequences?
maybe this is a good segue, because I appreciate what Emily just said. We can make it as detailed as we want, or we can make it as simple as we want. And one of the questions that I have, and maybe this, like, deciding which roadmap to choose, I think is premature before we establish who's going to be leading this work. And like, who has the capacity to lead this project and do this work? Because I think that's going to drive how much details we put into it, or how simple it is to a certain extent, right? It's like X group could say, well, I can totally lead this work and be the project manager if it's a simple plan, if we're only doing this. Where, oh, well, we have the capacity to do it, even if it's a bit, like, I think, kind of moving backwards, is like, who's owning this? Who's driving the work? Who's owning that roadmap? What is their capacity to do this work? And, I think that is an important piece of the conversation. I don't think it's the only piece. I don't think we make the decision based off of who's leading it. I think we still have to come to consensus, obviously. But I do think it's an important piece of, like, is it the city? Is it YBHA? Is it the county? Is it someone else? Is it like, who's leading it? What is their capacity? And kind of framing it from that angle as well.
So this gets, I'm gonna come to you in just a second, Jay. This gets into, I think, the ways that all of these decisions are if-thens and nested. So I want us to be able to talk through this at a high level, knowing we'll also get into the nitty-gritty of roles tomorrow. But I think we can get at, like, high level, what are we talking about here? Jay?
I was just gonna say what Angelica brought up is the top item under task, under phase one, governance and management of the project, and that's a discussion we'll need to have. I'm just suggesting that we get rid of the phasing on it. That gets confused with all kinds of other terms and project phasing. Turn it into a flow chart. I think the categories that we have in there, or that Clark's put together, are all relevant. It's just probably some of them can happen concurrently. And that's what we should ID, like, here's our flow chart, and these can happen at the same time.
And I will advocate that we need to put a timeline to it.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I mean, this group needs to decide, are we trying for an annexation? Because an annexation is going to the vote for the people.
I
And
agree.
it's either going to the vote of the people in the spring of 27, the fall of 27, or the spring of 28. And we need to make a decision how fast we want to move.
And all those come with costs.
Yeah.
The fall's by far the cheapest.
But has other implications.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So, okay, we've identified.
Like, which costs?
Right.
So I'm gonna, couple considerations that factor into what kind of roadmap we go for: project management, timeline as well. Anything else that we want to throw on the table that factors into your consideration of, do we go this way or this way? Do we go for a shorter kind of annexation first, plan next, small scope, quick, or a little bit of a year-long process, higher engagement? Any other factors we need to consider that influence you in one way or the other?
Just how do we know?
The,
No, right? I mean, you say single family homes, yeah, we know there's, a desire for single family homes. I mean, but what, there's a cost with that. I mean, is it some sort of mix? I mean.
Yeah.
So certainly from my perspective, it's,
But isn't that the scenario planning and getting feedback from the community?
Well, it is, but I think what you're talking about, right, is do we go with this fast track 250, or do we go with the longer process of that includes the scenario planning and the community engagement? That's what I was responding to. So that leans me towards scenario planning and community engagement.
That's what I would advocate for. I mean, I know we want to get a shovel in the ground. The fourth time's the charm. We do not want a fifth time on this one. And we've got to get it right, which means we've got to bring the community along with us.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when, that single family home is a good example. I think if you, as you look at the demands across the board and the desires across the board, they're going to run the gamut of mobile home park to single family home to condo to, townhomes. There's going to be a significant desire for all types of projects out there. Yes, single family homes are important, but so is housing affordable housing for large groups of people in whether they're condos or townhomes or whatever you want to call it. So those are community questions that have to be answered, or we need input from. If even on our board, if you just went around the table, I could talk to one of our board members and said, it's got to be the lowest AMI we could possibly reach. I could talk to another board member and said, look, I'm raising a family. I want a single family home. I need to expand. And so those are all desires across the spectrum of this community. One of the biggest disconnects is, if I looked at social media for a long time and I tracked it, and it was define affordable for who? Affordable for me, and I don't make $45,000 a year, is different than, affordable for someone who's making, $200,000 a year. They're just different, and they're not going to afford the same thing. So I like attainability better than anything else. And this has to be attainable to a large spectrum of our community. But you don't know what that is until you actually get input from that community.
I mean, I kind of disagree because we can ask everybody everything for the rest of the time and get nowhere. Or we can settle on some product and we can build 250 or whatever the number is of homes and all singularly focus on doing the proof of concept out there and leaving as much flexibility along the pathway for as those demographics shift. Or we can, I would ask a question for the folks that want to ask community input. What is it you're hoping to get from the community? I know you want the yes vote on the annexation, but what is the information that you're seeking from the community that we don't think we already have? As far as mixed type, do you want to know what the architecture design is, what they think the streetscape should be, where the parking should be? I'm trying to figure out what is the community input that you want for this first phase neighborhood.
It's the mixed, for me, it's a mixed type. And it's also, not repeating, making sure from the broader community perspective that, that is being brought along and is being informed all along, because we're gonna get the questions, right? Oh, what kind, about traffic. It wasn't just cost, right? It was traffic, it was cost, unintended consequences, right? So you got multiple sides of the coin that need to be, that will have concerns and questions that need to be answered.
To me, the broadest question is what would make you say vote yes in an annexation, and what would make you vote no? And what are those differences? And is there something we can do about those, super broadly speaking? And then maybe those questions could be more specific as we move forward.
What's in,
Yeah.
it's a mix. I think, I don't know if we need to hash this out right now, but it is a mix. Like, we need to engage the community. 100%. I agree. I also think that, we have a lot of studies that have already been done and have a lot of data. And so what is the data saying? Like, how can we merge those two? We have, the Cottonwoods where, you know, we do have a wait list, people who signed up for 120% AMI didn't win the lottery. And they would love to have won the lottery. So there are, you know, tons of people there, but so there is a need there, but, you know, 140%, is there a need for, like, I think we've got some data, we've got some practical things that have been done. We can engage the community. I don't think we need to get stuck on, one approach or going too far down one rabbit hole. I think 100%, we all agree. What is the data that YBHA already has, that the city already has, like, how can we utilize that best? I think that's the plan, right? There's a reason why we've commissioned these studies and, yeah.
I'll flip it too. I mean, what makes you so confident that proposing 250 single family homes with some commercial space and taking that to the vote of the people would pass?
Because I think it's a small enough scale that they understand the need and they would vote yes on it if they knew that there wasn't gonna be a tax consequence.
But that's what we don't, this has the potential in many respects to, like, pound for pound, in terms of, like, per unit, be much more expensive.
Yes, those are big.
Like, there's no scale here in terms of units to help bring costs down. So fundamentally, you're gonna be subsidizing more. So I just think, you know.
That's still gonna be brought back to the voter at some point if you have to subsidize more.
Right, I'm just saying, like, to your point, I mean, I don't, you know, I think all these perspectives are perfectly valid. I just want to make sure we enter into the sort of discussion, some of the base realities of, I would be careful to assume that, like, it's easy to, I don't know that building 250 units out there is possible, on its own. Unless, because in the world where development's going to happen, if you're going to get that initial investment from people without an understanding of whether anything more is going to happen, and when they ask, you're like, well, this is a proof of concept. They're going to be like, well, how big are we sizing the pipes, man? So, and then they're going to say, well, why would we pay for that scale of pipes? We don't actually know if we're going to get to the other end of our investment. And so the only way they're going to accommodate that is to be like, well, we're going to have to make, you know, like, if we don't really know how much pizza we're going to make long run, we're going to have to charge you a lot for those 2 slices, because at the end of the day, the cost is going to take us to sort of produce the whole pizza mechanism just for those 2 slices. Still, at the end of the day, like, we got to get all the ingredients and everything, whether we're going to make 10 slices or 10 pizzas or 2 slices.
And you made that argument of why it failed the first time.
Well,
because all that infrastructure was laid up front.
Well, yeah, I'm simply saying, like, I would just be careful to look at a concept of a certain number when you haven't done any of the work to ground any number in reality as a potential trap for you guys. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm simply saying, when we make statements that are like, I think this would be easy, I feel like it's partly my job here to sort of offer a perspective around, well, you don't actually know if you can even do that, much less build support for it.
Jay, and then Emily, and then Tom.
Just real quick, I don't necessarily disagree with Clark, but we do have the new constraint analysis, and we do have some from the infrastructure side, not the home building costs, an idea of what could be absorbed without significant community costs. So I think if we can all agree that that's the beginning point, which I think we're at, then we've got a cap to begin, and we look down on that and what could be absorbed. The one thing, from my understanding, that the constraint analysis did include was YDA. And that's, for us, we've been looking at some big developments out of the county and some stuff that we were looking at doing. The number one blockage right now is limitations within our power system, not just here, but throughout the county. Larger projects. So we need to touch base on it pretty quick as we get to this number. But that said, we've got it upper sized for this first phase. Do we have to identify what it is below that? That's probably what this process is for. It's 250 or 350. Who knows? But
Well, it's 400 EQRs, but I mean, to the extent that, I mean, an EQR rate is gonna be different for a single family home versus a townhome versus a fourplex.
Actually, they're all
Say again?
one EQR. They're all the same.
The issue would be on the commercial, which is a lower use usually.
The REQR, I'm sorry, though, the EQR assumes 2,500 square feet with a yard.
They're not one unit.
Right. So that's what I guess, that's what I was trying to intend, that it's not one unit, right?
So,
So it could be more units than 400.
yes. But it's also more than what's happening at Slate Creek. I mean, that's the reality.
We'll come back to Emily and then Tom.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't advocating for locking in on a number like 250, but just wanted to offer up to the group that the annexation process could be simpler. So I just wanted to clarify that. And then Dave, to answer your specific question about what do I hope to get out of any kind of community engagement, it would be a weighing of the trade-offs, because any single proposal that we like is going to have some pretty significant trade-offs, and having better community understanding, just broad community understanding around what those are, and being able to get input on what we would be trading in different scenarios, I think would be really valuable to get buy-in and defend.
And I mean, trade-offs on
I think-
traffic versus our,
I think that maybe one example of a trade-off to look at is product type. So a single family home, for example, the cost to develop it is going to be significantly higher than a different product type, just, say a condo. And so the level of subsidy that would go into it would be a lot higher. So how do we utilize STR dollars and any other sources coming into the project? That's an example of a trade-off where you're pulling levers and seeing the impact. I think we could get some really interesting feedback from the community, specifically through the scenario planning, looking at a trade-off like that.
Kind of how all of your guiding principles play out in actual practice in the design of things, of like, if you pull on your affordability lever, you may have to give up on another lever to some degree of like, okay, is it gonna, if we do the most affordable, is it gonna be as feasible, right? And what's the kind of mix that the community can tolerate that they're gonna vote on and support?
And like I was gonna say, Emily took the words right out of my mouth. Because community engagement is two-way communication. We're receiving feedback from the community, but we're also educating the community about the decisions that they are making when they send up to vote for this project. They need to understand the trade-offs. So you may have some folks that say, I want my single-family house back in the way to the fence. But when they start to understand what that means for the broader community, how much it costs, the decisions, they might be able to say, yeah, okay, I do want my single family house, but I do understand that we need some multifamily as well. And so I like this scenario that includes a greater mix of housing types. That's the primary purpose. And that's what I mean when I say we need to bring the community along with us. It's a two-way street.
I definitely believe that in the education and bringing the community along. I just mean about asking for the minutiae input on the parks and the street designs and those types of things can just bog down the process. And I think that's where I get hung up on getting too much. I mean, we're trying to put together this service and meet the need. And, the people that might want their white picket fence might have the loudest places.
So I'm gonna bring us back for a second to the question about project staffing, because it has been named as something that factors into like what the scope looks like. And then I want to get into the mode of, we've heard from this discussion a lot of the things that each of us are thinking about what's going to be successful, what we want the process to look like, what we hope for. And now we need to figure out some of like, what tweaks can we make that honor the variety of perspectives in this room that are going to get us towards a next step on this project. So I'm gonna have us thinking about that a little bit of like, so an example of that that I've heard is like, okay, one thing that we can do to add to this is make it a designated timeline. 12 months, right? That says we're gonna go through this, but we're not gonna take 3 years or something like that. And then I want to know from what you've heard from each other, what can we do to kind of meet each other's needs? Let's have a just general conversation about project staffing. Where do we see kind of the project management roles falling between the three entities? Yeah.
I think the obvious choice is the housing authority, which is geared up for the previous project and brought staff on to work on that. Seems to me logical. I know the city, don't need to speak for the city, but the county, we have a lot of big projects going on. The city has other things in the hopper, that those who have the specialized knowledge to work on a project should be doing it. I always use the term that I've been involved in a lot of housing projects and I've screwed most of them up because I'm not a housing expert. At some level, the doors open in the wrong way, or if someone on the project has screwed it up, so want people to do it and know what they're doing.
I agree. We've talked to the housing authority about it. I'm sure they, Elliot shared our conversation. We have some pretty significant capacity constraints at the city because of the other projects we're working on.
That's why BHA film.
Oh, I do.
We agree. Yeah, that the they should be taking the lead on this. Acknowledging that we are also missing a key staff member this summer and spring, and the existing staff are doing extra work right now to make up for that. And so we also have some capacity constraints, but agree that this falls squarely within
The ball should be in our.
yes, it falls squarely within YBHA's mission and expertise. Excited to step up.
I just need to have a lead answer that question.
And then any implications looking at like a prototype roadmap like this, and then thinking about your current capacity, what will you fill in a little bit of like what that story would look like when it came to executing something like this?
I think this works with the groundwork happening in the summer, and then the assessment, and I can't see what phase 3 is, but so those phases are going to require a more staff time, and that should work out well in terms of just current workload, and then also hoping to have an EVP on in the fall.
I think it's important that we define what that means. Say you're managing the project. What's the role of this group continuing forward? How are decisions made? That type of thing. So I think that's an important thing to define.
Agreed.
Can you give even like a general sense of like what you see as the project management role on this from your stance? And then we're gonna get into the nitty gritty tomorrow, but if you had to give a sense of like, here's what I think would be our role, here's what would be the role of this group.
I think the project management role is multifaceted. There has to be a project manager who's overseeing everything from a big picture, but then more specifically, there is keeping the Slate Creek Steering Committee running. So all of the behind the scenes work that Brad has been doing, which is a lot. And then there's managing the technical work, which means working with consultants and making sure that we're getting all the necessary inputs. A lot of work with city staff to make sure that those inputs are incorporated with the technical analysis. Then there's managing the community engagement and communications. So I think those are the three major buckets, and one sort of overall project manager to make sure that all of those major functions are working together.
With the assumption that there's probably some consultant team that's doing a lot of this work and you're just managing and overseeing.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Okay. That's helpful for getting, I think, a general lay of the land of kind of what that would look like to think in our decision making. I want to now open up to like, based on what you've heard from the whole group, what are things that we can do to think through the roadmap for this next phase that brings in the different concerns and perspectives? Yeah, so it's like, if this is our draft roadmap that we've got here, we've heard some different things that we like about it, don't like about it, have concerns about it. So far on the table, I have heard this definitely needs to be made into a Gantt chart. It's got to have a timeline to it. There's some questions about community engagement involvement here. There's a question of annexation timeline in here as well, and where that falls into the process. And I'm curious if there's other things that we want to add into the mix that we think, after hearing you all, I feel like we could do X to kind of revise this and get to something that everybody can support.
I feel good about supporting this with the parameters you just laid out. I don't think there's anything missing, but timeline important, overlapping important, laying out, like, I think we kind of covered. I don't think we're missing anything else that would prevent me from getting behind a roadmap like this.
I think the roadmap is fine. I think, you know, if I were to look at this from a management perspective, I would look at it in a very detailed word breakdown structure. And I'd look at, you know, tasks, subtasks, you know, say subtasks. But that'll tell you what's actually behind all of this. You know, you've got deliverables, which are fine. We just, and you can see it if we built a Gantt chart, you can see it. But I would love to see a work breakdown structure. And that's something that honestly, I'm not sure that wouldn't take long, honestly. But I don't know if you guys do that or you do that. Do that kind of
That's a
stuff.
little bit of, well, then you'll be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, everything we're talking about right now is that kind of first major activity area and groundwork of, or second of project scope. And then the other one is doing exactly what we're just doing, which is talking about like who's gonna run this thing. And then what we're gonna want to return to is some of the decision making. So you guys have this steering committee. You will want to return to the question of, because we talked about it in general terms, but we haven't ever like confirmed an approach. Where will the city council and YVHA board have opportunities to formally weigh in, and what does the nature of their involvement look like in county commissioners as well? We've talked about the value of trying to engender as much decision-making power into the steering committee as possible. And I think we all know the reality is that is going to have limitations, as it should. And so, just being clear on those things. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Lou to some degree. Like, it's not a hard step. But before you're going to spend a bunch of time developing out a scope and timeline and budget, like, you want to make sure the Gestalt idea makes sense. And again, for what it's worth, it's like the thing I struggled with the most in trying to like get into this is the sort of nature of how these things actually weave together, and but also keeping it familiar. And you probably remember that text. I was like, I don't know. It's like, let's not stray too much from where we are now before we get their buy-in on the overall idea. So.
And I think, and I, following up on that, that's what I look at from whether it's YVHA board, city council, county, I mean, those, where those decision points are, right? And identifying those that, okay, we can't move beyond this until we've got buy-in from the governing bodies.
So would YVHA be the forward face of the project, or would it be the steering committee with YVHA?
I'll give you my opinion, and that's why I brought it up before in terms of collaboration. I think it has to be a collaborative effort in terms of communicating this out. I don't think what we want is, here's the face of YVHA, that's the face, and that's what we're doing. It's gotta be, this is what YVHA, the city, and the county are doing. That's my view.
That's the way we've kind of designed this for what it's worth. I mean, that's what you guys are talking about, seeing. Right? Otherwise, you're kind of going back to where you were.
I agree, especially when it comes to staff and YVHA staff and people who are working on this project. They are acting on the direction of their board, the guidance of their board and the guidance of, the city and the county that kind of own the IGA and what does that look like? And so I think it's not fair to put and correct me, I don't know, this is my personal opinion, it's not fair to just put like a YVHA project manager or as a staff member being like, here's what we're doing without the grounded, like very visible support of the city and the county and the board.
I think it's crucial to success,
You know,
especially with the missing.
well, what I was gonna say is the alternative is the model that we're taking for this, Stockbridge site is we've hired an owner's rep that is really acting as our project manager. That might be an alternative, is if we look at somebody who is the project manager, like an owner's rep. In conjunction with the housing authority, so taking the lead of managing that person. But that removes a little bit of the burden since you don't have an ED. And is, for lack of a better word, sort of a neutral party that is sort of the face and the project manager of this. That might be an effective way of managing project from here. I mean, somebody like Keith Minor.
You can't use all this time. on it.
Oh, we're using that. I don't think he has the capacity, given the two projects he's working on. Those are. But I'll ask him.
And this may be the conversation for tomorrow too, but I don't know like what your capacity is or how that, I mean, from a,
Well, those are,
Cascadia, from that, from, is that something that's on the table too? And maybe that's.
well, I mentioned, last time I can't remember if it was here or in the project management call, but, we would have to look at whether we would, we'll kind of look at everything and see if it makes sense for us to keep doing something. And we did talk a little internally, and that assumes if people want to keep working with us. But I think that's a little, we can bring, whether it's us or somebody else, can certainly bring capacity. I think what Tom's describing is an approach that can really just, you're finding like a chief problem solver whose job is to just sort of ferret things out and make sure things are moving along, and is a little different than what we can do. I think, a few things are implied in this, especially if you were to keep, I think, working, with the way we are approaching it, is you'll have to make that final call on, are we really going to do this with a community engagement approach or more of a technical development approach? I think it's the technical, in both cases, I think that type of role is good. If you go the technical development approach, you gotta have that person, right? Especially to almost give just like, because you wouldn't need us, but you probably would value from a quasi intermediary. You really want to be clear, like, who does this person report to? Because you could run into the same types of, dynamics and stuff. But I think that could be really helpful, because then you're kind of in a project manager mode. It sounds like it's similar to what you're using now. In the context of something that is more of a process to help engage the community, people are learning, people understanding, we're bringing people along, we're deciding where we want people to be involved in making decisions, and building a combination of kind of community understanding, support, and political will to do the stuff that you want to get done. You may or may not want that person throughout, unless you guys just don't have the bandwidth on the process side, to sort of have somebody who's there throughout. And then I think there are different ways to do it, but it's a slightly different role. Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, one is somewhat more technical, like project management. The other is a little bit more process management. And I realized that, under the context of some of what we've been talking about and some of Dave's points, which I think are really good in terms of like, how do we just get this thing done? Even the term process might not sound great to some people because it sounds like more stuff that isn't nails getting hammered.
That doesn't say that the ownership couldn't come in at some later point, right? Or, whatever appropriate.
Especially if and when you guys engage with a development partner, and especially if that's early on, I've seen that approach can be extremely valuable to ensure that a community isn't getting led astray. And actually, depending on how you structure the arrangement, if you worked with somebody like Cascadia, Alex Joyce is great on that stuff because he sort of has the whole development understanding. Like he does development, but then he has people on his team that do the sort of technical planning and scenario planning, actually led by another Alex on their team. So, and there are other folks I'm sure like that, and maybe more local. The challenge with some of those, Alex are up in the Pacific Northwest. So, but the idea, I think, is a good one.
Actually rearrange some things. I'm going to jump us into roles for the remainder of our time today and just get into this a little bit. And then we're going to return to this tomorrow, having flushed some of this out. And we'll also bump communications and community engagement tomorrow. But I'm going to have this we're here now. Let's stay here for a second. Does that feel okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I go through. Okay, so we've already been talking about this, right? In terms of overall, starting with who's gonna provide this project management role. You named 3 buckets. We can use those 3 buckets. I thought about 5. But I think some of them overlap into things that you were talking about. So overseeing the team collaboration, things like scheduling these meetings, who's facilitating, that could be a project manager, it could be a consultant team that does something like that. Executing the roadmap is where I'm gonna have, this is probably the place where SC comes into play most often of like, what are the specific things that you all really want to make sure need to come back to this group, right? That this group is fulfilling. Managing schedules and deliverables, resource and budget management, and then stakeholder communication of who's communicating out from all of this, right? So the way that I'm gonna go through a number of things and then I'm gonna have us do the activity. So I'm gonna have us do a RACI chart brainstorm on this. Folks familiar with RACIs? Or does anybody not? Okay, cool. So RACI just outlines 4 different roles that people play on a given project team. So it doesn't, in some ways you could make it RC. I don't know why it's RACI and not RC, but accountable is really your top one. Accountable is the person who's ultimately accountable and has yes, no, or veto. So that's the place where we would want to really make sure we know, where does SCSC have accountable role that they move something forward, right? Where does the project manager have the accountable role versus where is maybe the project manager responsible on something? But SCSE is the one who makes the decision. Multiple people can be responsible. Only one person can be accountable. Otherwise, if 2 people are accountable, you get pointing fingers at the end of the day. You were supposed to do it. No, you were supposed to do it, right? But you might have multiple people who are responsible for the same activity, who work on it together. And then you've got the layers of consulted, who do we need to get advice from at different points? So we're something where we need to get advice from city council on something, but SC ultimately makes the decision or something like that. Or where do we need a decision from council? And then who needs to just be informed on stuff? Who needs to be kept up to date? You could really do a RACI on the whole roadmap itself, but we're going to stay at the level of like high-level project management activities. And the first step in this will be determining what activities we want to include in the RACI. So an example of under resource and budget management, one activity may be applying for grants underneath that, or draft full project budget, right, is going to be an activity. And then we need to figure out who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for that. Some of these things will include transfers of current roles, as we talked about Brad being project manager as working with us as consultants and currently contracted through the city of Steamboat. That might be some of the stuff that we want to outline. Do all contractors now go through YBHA versus city of Steamboat? When could city of Steamboat work independently to bring on a support role in this too? So that's the type of activities we want to lay out in here. And then we'll figure out the different roles. That being said, I want to just talk through a little bit of the contractor support piece because that's a question that's come up. And we can put sticky notes in here of like, we don't have anyone, we want contractor support here, right? In that. So here's just a little bit of an update on where we stand right now. So right now, the Belonging Colorado grant is funding the support from community builders and Civic Canopy. There's about 35,000 that remains in grant funds. Note with this that with a grant, there's requirements and there's some expectation of community engagement, just as versus just support for this governance process. So you have to think through how you want those funds to be used, and then it needs to be spent by the end of 2026. So generally what this could look like is if you wanted us as consultants to keep this process moving, we've got about 3 to 4 months worth of funding that we could get this process started for. Basically, it's the short answer there. You've already kind of named some of this, but there's a couple different pathways. There's one where you say, this is all staff across the 3 entities that are going to do this. I think I just heard that capacity is low and it feels like there's a need for some amount of contractor work. There's the chance that at the end of this process, we set you up with what you've outlined as your desired sort of scope of work, and you use that to bring in a contractor that fits your needs and your gaps that you've identified. Or there's a pathway forward that Clark has outlined a bit here around working with us in Cascadia to move you through the roadmap. And Clark, will you just talk through this a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I wanted to be careful not to get too far into detail without knowing what you guys were going to want to do. And I recognize that knowing what you guys want to do would be helpful with more detail. But at the end of the day, I think it's important that you guys sustain momentum. We talked about that previously, that the gaps that happened, for example, between when the Belonging Grant resources ran out in August and when we were able to sort of start again in January was a challenge. So you want to keep things going. That said, you don't want to just sort of do work to do work. People are going to get frustrated with that. So using these resources to really get clear on moving a couple of these important pieces forward. And so, one of them is going to be just transitioning you guys into a different orientation here where you're shifting out of this space of figuring out how are we going to rethink the way we work on this together and now shift into a mode of, all right, now we're going to do it together. And we're sort of come up with the new structure. And so, moving into that space of execution, I think there's a lot of this can be knocking out the sort of scope, the budget, the timeline at a level of detail and clarity that is going to be important however you move forward, whether it's, whoever helps you with it, unless you decide to try to roll solo. And then, there's probably other aspects of that kind of project execution based on what we were just talking about. Then, there's some groundwork activities around developing actual community engagement and communication strategies and systems. When I say systems, it's things like a website. And, if you're going to do community engagement, We typically build like a data system to sort of bring things in. It sounds hard. It's really helpful. It's not actually. And then developing those project teams that we discussed earlier. Then there's some work around some targeted engagement. You guys talked about bringing in partners. For one of the first things you guys talked about when you began sort of putting things on the wall a couple meetings ago was we need to bring in more of the partners. We need to bring in folks in school district, but so some of the targeted engagement there might be a really nice first step, bringing them in at the front end of this to sort of say, here's what we're thinking. Do you guys have any suggestions? Same thing with getting some feedback on what you're talking about here from the developer advisory committee. And the idea of that is really good. And they will probably have feedback on things we've been talking about today, even around things like scale. They will probably give you guys good information. So I think some of that type of work would be helpful in terms of getting started. The reality is, I also think you could dig into, again, depending on like the readiness of the group, some of the steps that we had outlined in that stage around assessment. I think you could begin getting into that. The key is knowing where the resources are going to go, because you're not going to want to do like $10,000 worth of work and then have to stop for 3 months while you're figuring out what next. And we don't really know what that is. So everything here is sort of based on a budget of what the existing resources from Belonging Colorado are.
All right,
It
so
was at first, it was just like, we didn't, I actually didn't, when Kayla and I were talking, I was like, oh, we want to propose something to him. She's like, yep. And I was like, all right. So then it came together, I was like, all right, I'll throw some things out. But obviously you guys should beat the heck out of this and, tell us what you think.
I'm not gonna have us beat the heck out of it just yet, because I'm just giving it for context.
Get to it.
I'm trying to like dump everything out, and now we're gonna come back into it, but that's where you can kind of start thinking about contractor support. So what I'm gonna have us do first is I'm gonna give, YVHA is gonna be pink. City of Steamboat is gonna be, teal, and then Rock County is gonna be blue. And you've got more as well. I just gave you starter.
Do they need, do you want markers or pens? Good.
Markers would be great. If you got.
Yeah.
There's more.
Round County's blue. Like color?
So I think it's to identify roles.
Roles, so we can quickly see where each one is showing up in the RACI chart.
But we can't assign them an IBHA.
Oh, that's a good question.
No, seriously, I think it's more, or are we gonna go back and reevaluate that?
Well, I actually stole some of yours, so I could have done this.
Like maybe this breakdown, just where we think we fit, and then we can.
Yeah, that's my question. Is it where we think we fit? Stuff.
We're gonna start with where we think we fit, but then we're gonna go into where else you might think folks should. So,
Just sit down and break stuff down.
Oh, okay, knock it up there.
So what you're gonna go ahead and do is I'd start with activities. So what are the different activities that we want to outline here before you name where you think your role is? So on something like the example we had, you're gonna create an activity. Activities are gonna be all different colors. That does not mean anything in terms of colors. But then you're gonna put your sticky note where you think your word fits within the racing for that activity. So applying for grants, say support planning, who's in each role for something like that. It's gonna be the activity. You look confused, Tom.
It's a hard one to answer.
Yeah, who comes up with the activities? Are we coming up with the activities?
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
Progress.
so maybe we need to start
Yeah, I'd say start with, so let's do a first round of activities first before, so go ahead and on your own, jot down 5 activities. Actually, no, I'm gonna do it a different way. Okay. I'm gonna assign you all, you're each going to find one sheet to start at and start populating activities for that one. So there's 5 sheets. So there should be no more than 2 people at each sheet. To start. So you can choose the one that interests you the most. I'm gonna spread these out a little bit more. I'm gonna keep these 2 close because sometimes I'm how you interpret them. I have a feeling that they might combine a little bit. I want to make a station back here.
Yeah, aren't the activities already identified, that phase and work together, not the activities, most of the activities?
The roadmap.
Not that I don't want to think, but it seems like you already sunk it.
There may be ways to apply. I think a lot of these fall into executing the roadmap. There may be other things that you have for tasks that deal with like team collaboration that aren't necessarily up here in some ways too.
And there's more detail in this version if you guys want from an activities perspective. It's longer than fits on a sticky, but that if you need some cheat sheets,
So we go?
Yep, go ahead and find one. And no more than 2 people.
I'll do this. Back, you want to pick one?
I will pick one near and dear to your heart.
Awesome.
Stakeholder communication.
We can right?
In the spot. We're.
So inspired.
Work towards working.
Are you looking at community engagement or is that tomorrow's conversation?
That's tomorrow's conversation, but if you have something that probably would fall into this one of like one of those things. It might get more specific later on, but like hosting community workshops. What level does that fall into? But if we just say like host community engagement or something too.
Well, I guess we gotta identify our stakeholders.
Yeah. Got an activity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we?
So we putting sticky.
We want sticky notes.
Building a communication.
And will you want your activity something, that would be a nice move around and, oh, they go up, yeah. Go down. That's okay. Okay, got it.
It's a meeting cadence, and
I think that makes sense. Some sort of advisory committee.
I think he really might be
That makes sense.
really developing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, like facilitation. It's like all that stuff.
Focus.
Yeah.
Some of the might also be like organizing meeting space.
Forum.
These are.
Letters, social media.
That has to go like this.
Oh, it's just.
This is approaching.
Yeah, because there's a big difference in
Stakeholder. Yeah.
Yeah, is this all community engagement?
He moves around.
Or is this stakeholders?
Might be so like.
Is it?
It's, in terms of like from a project management lens, it needs to be communicated for what? So it could be communication with contractors as well. It's not necessarily community engagement per se. but could be like internal project meetings or things like that too.
Okay.
But like,
Pretty broad.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it team? Steering committee?
So, and it could be like meeting summaries is a piece, right? And so I think at the like project management.
Is this the Kale, is this the collaboration for the steering committee?
It's really broad, yeah.
Okay. So receive the team.
So at a project management level, right? I mean, so is this being outline, general public community engagement or floundering?
Sounds delicious.
Doesn't it? Yeah, from Brown, but yeah. No, so we were just talking about this, right? And I think what Gail said is to look at it from a project management perspective. Being very specific in terms of like minutes and. Yeah, we were looking at it from, is this more community engagement, but it's.
Think of it. We're thinking scoping. Think of it as I'm. Level.
That goes in more.
Yeah, in the sense that it's like a. In project.
I mean, you do have to do that down to task level, but yeah, who's gonna hold this bucket? Right, and if the bucket is, website communications. Okay, great, or even the hosting websites, that can be city as one thing. Or communication could also be like just resourcing and communication. Like right now, the city's doing. I'm not, I'm also trying to intuit the game plan here, but that feels like that's the level that I sit.
Looks like one.
It's like, right?
Okay.
There's stress for you.
Yeah, you can go ahead and.
Well, I mean, he's a nice team here.
Be right back.
Yes, he is out of state.
Well, yeah, that's a.
And that's a great one, I would say, it's like managing the SCSC process.
Yeah.
Like managing that team and facilitating, like who's gonna, facilitation and code, you guys.
Yes.
Forever in.
I mean, I think that's a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Overall project facilitation too, that's like, process.
Like, a role in just chamber leadership tonight. I thought that was that.
Scenario consultants, that's not specific to this one, but I was trying to.
Put it in the Monday night.
There.
Let's say communication strategy, yeah,
So,
and that's pretty broad, right?
Very good.
Not really. He's not worthy. That was.
you are activity work.
Well, and what if, and I would say. Part of it
I
is-
think I'm the only one that uses this stuff.
I eat a lot. I'm still back up.
Oh,
Yeah, so you.
It's kindling. That's like.
Because they're done in your refrigerator.
Like HA.
Go free to work. It's good.
gets that sorted.
Got money covered? Oh, Emily's got free. I would say it's covered. Well, once, Emily, you can feel free to rotate and you all can rotate too. You feel like you've gotten it started on this one.
Okay.
Regular nacho.
Wait a minute.
Ooh.
You're the finger is gonna get all put out. Yeah. I'll figure out that.
Identify or why then you identify it?
Who designed your right?
Oh, This was what, it's the worst we.
Okay, you are very.
So.
That kind of discussion around the office, we were like, wait, are we crossing there?
I'll rewind.
Yeah,
In this category, one that I might put across
Yes.
yeah.
or in one of these is like aggregating existing data. So when we think about like the assessment phase, who's pulling everything together? That's what we know now. That's kind of a project management role.
I don't know, everyone's already covered them all. Okay, nowhere left to be done.
It's all done.
Oh,
Much appreciated.
we're in it. No, it's just like, I was, because I didn't feel like it was the moment she's transitioning, you guys, I was like, please.
Like I received that message.
Yeah, I was like.
So, yeah.
That's kind
I'll have
of.
it to-
That's right. But is that like that text? Did say like. Well, I was gonna add some.
Oh, yeah.
Very little.
Or just seek out on the DA says. Brown. Something last stop.
Right.
So you have to stop saying that it's June 26th. I didn't hear them before. It's amazing how time sneaks up. There'll be a.
Just about that 35.
Yeah, right. Here, and he's a firefighter down there, but yeah, I drove through it like, I want to say it was last fall or something. It's really nice. He has a couple of coworkers that live there.
It's 280.
Yeah,
Why don't we just know that?
it wasn't, we did look at it. He has like a case study of like examples of all other like similar happenings.
But I like wonder why this whole process. We can just duplicate that.
I know,
It's the same size scale,
it would be nice.
same unit bed, I mean, pretty comparable.
Yeah.
Which project you guys doing?
Little ranch in Edwards.
Great.
I know, it's so nice.
Yeah, I've used it as a case study when we were first doing it. I think it's, you know, scale and everything. It's.
So
Yeah.
why do we go through this?
I
mean, just not trying to be.
no, I don't question the reasoning of your ask. I just think that what's being asked is like, will the community actually support it? And two, what's different is that Miller Ranch was much more developable from a fiscal perspective at the time for a lot of reasons. But and so I think the question is like, if everybody was certain that you could like get that Miller Ranch done, I think you'd probably have a lot of.
We've been down to see like the fading west communities.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, it's still matter. Activity.
They're pretty bad.
Yeah.
I know the infrastructure costs.
I think that's the question, is understanding that. And then also, I think the other question is whether you take the risk of not engaging the community with these, like, I think the community's gonna be good versus not, because if we do it and they actually aren't supporting, they'll feel like they weren't heard again. And it might sort of take water forever, whereas, you know, putting some time into getting everybody aligned through a process may be valuable. I don't know that the only thing I can do is to offer perspective. And like I said, I'm not a dog in the race, like, or whatever they say.
Sometimes not.
Yeah.
Yeah. To go back and ask them what type of units you want.
Yeah, the interesting question.
I mean, Villa Ranch, so like, they're. Okay, government provided. It's gonna be perfect, but I mean, go to the market, yeah, city gonna give 30 million subsidy. It's like, that's how that was successful.
Okay, does anybody have the full pink pad?
I use all mine.
There's a larger. Oh, here, okay. Okay, so here's what we have you do. This round, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have you get together with folks in your organization. So you're all gonna talk together as an org as you go through these. And what you can write on here in particular is breaking it out into smaller roles in your org. So if something is specific to city council versus city staff, that's what you would write on here to be able to maybe city council needs to be consulted, but city staff needs to be informed on something or whatnot, right? So I'm gonna have you do that with your color. I'm gonna keep the big sticky notes, the blue, teal, and pink at the table, because I am gonna allow you to volunteer another org to nominate. But you're just gonna put a star in the corner if you are saying, I think that this is the right role for another org here, and you want to nominate them into a role. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you think, hey, we're gonna use PM for project manager, and that would be so far we've identified that as YBHA role. But we also talked about an owner's rep, and if there's a role for that too. I'm gonna add green is we don't know what work it's gonna be.
Oh, okay, whatever.
If we need
rep
to-
or consultant,
Mhm.
or- okay,
Yeah,
not me.
And it's informed, consulted, something in responsible.
accountable and responsible.
Yeah.
What category can only have one?
Yeah.
Okay, accountable, yep. Okay. So go ahead and come together with your org and you'll just rotate. I'll let you do it at your own pace for each of these activities.
And
Yeah.
we're clarifying the green could be informed community and everything. No. An owner's rep anyway.
But yeah,
That's just.
Not in
yeah.
That's what you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's fine. That's where you.
This one's teal.
Do you?
And it's sorry, and blue. It's city of Steamboat, okay.
And blue is county.
Right, we're gonna be staff.
I have one.
Oh, yeah, that actually put
Yeah.
FDNB, so we know that's who you're talking about.
You be informed or what?
Advisory committee.
Communications.
So we're completely.
In terms of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, who creates that?
Is probably responsible for.
When you're in budget, ACC will want.
That's the SC.
But this is just for our organization.
No.
No.
You know,
So the thing.
ACC.
we're helping Morgan trying to start a transformation.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah.
But then they.
AJ
No, it's probably gonna be.
Oh, Councilwoman.
I'm gonna
Council.
grab these, cause I'm gonna do the same and make some more for other groups, cause that was a good idea.
I think, I don't think we're responsible, but I think we are responsible with others to set the truth. So, I think that you have.
They're the ones that are gonna be like.
They're the ones that are simply being responsible, they'll be responsible.
Is this right now, community?
So you have something to focus.
Yeah.
Like today, is that?
Yes.
who's-
I think that alone is coming.
So, you know, that.
CSPs that you
That'd be-
use for
Or if
SCs.
there's somebody else in there.
So
A CFC here.
Read me all that.
Yeah.
Have it, other.
Meeting on.
This is like absolutely.
No, like,
We get on that.
That looks okay.
Giving the only talking about just the budget. Not for living with her.
It's fine. Certainly the city should be
You're so SCRC.
consulted on the communication level, right?
Something where you like.
Yeah, don't you think also goes through?
You're maybe feeling like this needs to come back to this.
So,
Communications plan.
Okay. Like.
That's the.
oh, yeah.
Women
I think
versus, that's helpful for me, like, when do we?
Bring it back and say, city, change here,
Exactly.
or here it is.
They'd be informed and then they'd be consulted at the same time, right? That's a good way.
Okay.
And,
I don't know, maybe it's that one.
okay,
I mean,
Okay,
let's go with this. Square.
so.
so far, more or less being consulted, or we haven't had input come back to us.
City council,
Yeah. Who's responsible?
okay. I think we need to have the same. Yeah. We're not.
We have.
Well, nothing.
But
We're developing.
If they're gonna be lead on it, or. We need them. We don't have to, but we don't have to go through all of it.
We do. We're supposed to go through.
Well, I guess they'll probably do the same thing on that chart, they'll nominate. us.
Right, exactly.
We'll call it.
Yeah, that's true. So,
They're big.
well, are we supposed to do that yet?
I think his lower and lower advisory.
You're saying, who are you saying reports out to decision makers?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's. Maybe Jay's accountable.
maybe that's so. That is.
Yeah.
Scheduling deliverables.
Developing meeting hidden. Being consulted.
Consulted first.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, their account, more responsible would be on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're meeting. Yeah. It's like.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's like. SCS.
Or like all these.
That's right?
Yeah.
No, it's.
Oh, no, well, responsible means who's doing it,
Yeah.
who's responsible for getting it done. Who's what?
Is schedule.
Right.
Is it
Yeah.
just informed
Right.
or do they want to consult?
Oh, okay.
Do we put something to?
Don't know.
Always.
No comment.
Yes, there's a makers.
And I don't know.
The sister big. Council.
Okay, well, I
I
know
know
we
we did
did
already.
safely submit reporting funded the stakeholders as a staff.
Yeah.
Again, important.
Do we want to, it's okay. This. Okay. We're waiting to trade you all.
Okay.
Retreat.
We'll see.
Yeah, we're just gonna name all those cities over the harbors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get back.
You can just move them across.
Identify stakeholder. Just consulted. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stakeholder advisory committee consultant. Managing the process. Communications plan.
Consult.
You know, because now we're trying to disenfranchise.
Report out by decision makers. I'll get one. Well, aren't we responsible? No, the BCC is not responsible for. Plan in-person opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, one left. I got one. We've all one. So we're flying back.
Develop budget for road now, amazing.
I'm gonna change all of them just to give myself an initial take. Sort of feeling we started so much of what we're doing is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I feel like people won't like the idea that we continue. But I think realistically.
No, I think
if
we're
bringing
both
more
work.
things
To build up the series. What's that the word?
So let's get one of. We might.
Different color.
You don't know that. Right, right. Right, contract. That's the city of Steamboat Springs. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty low. Yeah.
This is green.
Sorry, I was thinking this green.
Okay.
I'm not from.
Well, I have quite some.
Done. All right.
This is you.
What, go back to the other folks, so you get the whole picture.
Sounds good.
With Tom.
So that's not really asking. Are we improving, I guess, city defense?
Yeah, probably 30 to.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just gonna show over, but shoot.
Oh, nice.
Elder care.
One thing on.
And that's the time I touch stone.
Oh, like, okay, so. Yeah, because we have this.
My parents are divorced, but
Jake said that he's already in the SCS.
I feel like the spouses are.
All right, yeah. And then the only thing would be, I think, like, there's one on that one.
At least like the current plan, when it's the current.
Parents and allow them to take a week off.
That's.
Well, like with the way that they're not even set up, like you don't really get stuff around this exchange.
Feel like we're making
If you do
decisions.
that, if he just wants like anything that is here, like stands to, you know,
Okay.
but he doesn't, they're doing it, I don't feel like any staff needed to be involved in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What committee?
Same sheet.
He's a
Comic stuff, so like.
Well, we haven't done, we've like, added money.
Thank you.
For different studies, like why we change, but like, we don't turn on analysis, next living stuff, like all of it, like.
You don't know how good you know she is. She's a physical therapist by training, so like she knows.
So then on that side.
She knows how to be in all the time.
Resource and budget. And you all have technically taken over that might need to annex to be here.
Yeah.
And we actually just need like city and Round County here with SDR.
Yeah, we've got that. Yeah, I mean. The smallest player when it comes to money, but yeah, really, yeah. But I think, I felt like there was the roadmap.
And I wanted to go into
Okay.
all this. Elements and Face up.
Very small.
Side.
Yeah.
So like it will also.
Yeah.
If.
It all worked. It worked out fine.
It's fine. My wife is actually in 3 years noted. She's been in the same job now for like 22 years. And she's the only person confirmed that day. Confirmed, like, but it was so much notice that they kept forgetting. Seemed like at the end of last year, they're like, "This is your last year." She's like, "No, I'm working this year." It's just that's right because I know. I just told her. So,
This is your 5-minute warning. So think about what you want to be able to get to before the end of the day, and then we'll return to this conversation tomorrow.
Well, government in particular, like that's like the. I ran, I was
Okay, just
at.
triple check.
The program there. That we did was help local governments understand the aging of the population means for the services that you provide.
Yeah.
And we also were like very clear, your resources need to be part of this conversation. So you had, naturally have an older workforce than. And less people to fill those positions because they just aren't schooling, whatever, with the state dealing about government service. So you gotta be into that issue.
We always.
Tell us their thought.
Yeah, we've been Board of County Commissioners, like, I think that this group.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite big change. Yeah.
Like,
Skill sets to.
You'll be ready if you're in the office.
Yeah, to jump back.
Well, like, in terms of the.
That's what we get.
Something.
Collaborating, we thought about it was like the whole thing, like,
Yeah.
40 years.
Yeah.
That's the project, not necessarily
This field is like.
how much we're gonna need.
Folks who are good at it.
Very interesting.
Video gamers, everything's like joystick and automatic stuff, as
Yeah, yeah.
opposed to the old days. But it's got, yeah, like, some of the stuff here, like. So there's actually a lot of skills and it's actually.
People won't do.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah. That was true, to see that chairman.
Yeah, see, needs to be. Yeah, I have those questions. I didn't know if that was.
Sorry, managing.
Oh, yeah, there's like meeting cadence.
Or maybe.
I know, I'm sitting here.
I have a big, I made like.
Oh, yes.
Sitting there for a while, I mean, 'cause I can see those aspects. Well,
Great, my question is like. Environment, like.
That way matters.
Like,
It really helps its fleets.
you know, we being in this. Like, I was, yeah, like wind and
Yeah.
the PM just run with stuff.
Mhm.
That's one of those things, but yeah.
Yeah.
But, so I don't know if that, yeah, that's like, that's the team.
Absolutely. And
There's some.
Well, is it?
yeah.
I think it's like determine expectations of the, like.
Yeah.
Expectations.
It's kind of interesting to see.
Yeah.
Oh, I got one more.
That's their limitation.
Also a lot of these.
Oh, darn, there's a whole nother.
Blue. Oh,
Yeah.
one right spinning on it.
Oh, so good. Oh, good.
Well, that helps us. I like stuff by the other week downtown.
I was thinking.
No, I do remember.
That's all.
Um,
Yeah.
Phase two is.
Yeah. They do. I agree. I think that. That was discovered it's.
Yeah.
I nominated them for something.
So.
The Bamble words. So I was like, no, hold on. Because I just think that there's more. Yeah.
134
meetings.
Yeah. It's not. Networking foundations where like JK.
That don't want to do this.
And it's like, oh. It's not community based.
No, like the way they stepped up at the fire fund last year.
Want to do this all bit of that?
No interest. That's right.
Then they're like, oh, that's what they're gonna jump into issues with it should.
We'd be responsible, everybody, everybody.
SMR related stuff. So we go more.
Well, yeah, great.
About that. We make our flow chart.
Working on it. See if I can get a,
Screw it up.
see what I'm trying like some, what's on Canva here.
Yeah.
All right.
When you all see it, is that tending to refer to that council?
Use the rainbow points just to reinforce the.
The unity.
Yeah, religious that about it.
That's right.
But something like collecting data could have a staff. That one might be a.
You ever get back down to the going forward often or no?
I. Connected on.
Reaching.
Data's already. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to maybe think about that.
Yeah, you get that long enough.
Too close. You get
Step away, wait for it.
For sure. Yeah, you gotta be forgotten.
But this is my thing, but I'll imagine like.
I think last time I stayed with you.
Why does it- Yeah.
That changed hands.
Yeah, no.
Right, and so getting the, I think is like.
Yeah. It'll be fine.
It's so, okay.
Yeah, so then they, you know, Brad knows about having worked with me.
She'll be better tomorrow, so she's saying, it's always gonna be better than one doing.
Number 9. Yeah, all right, folks. I'm gonna go ahead, pull us back together to wrap up today. Okay, so, was just talking with a couple of folks that, revealed, and I heard in some of your discussions, some of how you approach this might change depending on who you are, or like what org you're from, or how much sleep you've had. So you might come back in the morning and go, oh, I'm thinking about that a little bit differently. So we're gonna re-engage with this in the morning. The other thing to think through is that this is an opportunity to get ahead of potential conflicts that happen when, as 3 individual entities, you might have an assumption about your given role or an assumption of what needs to come to SCSC. And we want to make that explicit here in different ways, right? And I think I heard you talking a little bit about like, if you're in the PM role, what are my guardrails? What can I do independently? When do I need to come back to the full group? And that being another piece of this. So we may not spell out every single activity in this. And each of these activities could probably get split into multiple, like even developing like meeting logistics is like, who's in charge of tech, who's in charge of snacks, who's in charge of space. Those are like little nitty gritty things, right? But that you don't have to hash out. But at least so you know, when might I be able to communicate through something when I feel like, oh, is this your role or mine, right? And then Clark's been working on kind of revising a little bit of this roadmap based on our conversation to return that back to us tomorrow. And then we'll get into the conversation about the communications plan and community engagement as another layer to this before pulling everything back together tomorrow to hopefully be at close enough space that our team can do a revision and put it back to you. I think that's everything I've got. Anything else before we break?
I put together while we were talking some slides that I can, if it's okay, that I can share with the group that use the Jackson Hole case study of scenario planning applied to a housing project. For you guys just to again, sort of, I think it's hard to conceptualize some of these things. So I want to make sure we're all like a level ground in terms of what that even means. It might be useful just for people to wrap their heads around it. To be clear, I'm not wanting to sell you guys on that approach if it's not what you're needed. I think I mentioned that to you. I'm like, you guys don't need it. you don't do it, but if you want to do it, make sure you know what you're getting into and what it can bring, which is a lot, but it's, to Dave's point, it'll take some time and effort and stuff like that. So I'll share those with you guys if that's okay by the, rules of the road, because it's not anything that we can like. It's just a slide. It's just a handful of slides with images.
And then one more thing, I'm gonna have each org share out tomorrow how they kind of approach this activity, their thinking behind it. So be ready for one person to speak out. And then for my online participants, we'll go ahead and take photos of these. We'll make sure they're in the notes as well. I know that's not the most fun part of the meeting to watch. So thanks for bearing through that. All right, see you all in the morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
A motion to adjourn.
What are those